welcome you to the summer of virtual IndyCar race. Yes, Redline, Apex, Coanda, plenty of those drivers to take center stage. And I've got my eyes also focused on the iRacing IndyCar community favorites, the likes of Christian Steele and Rob Milechka, recent iRacing Indy 500 winners, and Phil Kraus, the man that loves to build houses here at the Speedway. 6 races, $7,000 on the line, and the most stacked field of IndyCars iRacing has ever seen. 4 champions, iRacing Indy 500 winners, we've got them all, and a stack up behind, and a crash already. Oh, drivers forgetting how to start racing. It's PS competition and Danny Lorenzo, they get mixed up. That now make their way down pit lane. Your race leader has done 24 laps. Costantini, Veyron going to be following in behind.
Chase is going to be on. Coitert is likely going to take the race lead here.
Where does the 17 emerge though in relation to the oncoming up to speed traffic directly in front of the battle that we've been following? So Coanda, Veyron, the number 9, 27 laps to go, side in front of
the race lead here because Veyron, Leo, and Costantini all down pit lane simultaneously.
Veyron, Leo, Costantini, and then Zandarin and Michael Johnny release themselves from the limiter. And here comes the move for the lead. Leo jinks to the inside, down Holman Boulevard, and slides his way back to the point. 75 laps complete. Eduardo Leo, the best that Indianapolis saw across the race. Time to just turn left, but to do it rather fast. Welcome to the fastest short track into the world and to the Iowa Speedway for round 3 of the VCO IndyCar Challenge powered by Open Wheels. Already we've seen 2 fascinating races with Michele Costantini and Eduardo Leo stamping their authority at the front of the field. Can either of them make it 2 wins in the season, or will someone else make themselves known? Hi folks, Arjuna Kankipati alongside of Joey Tebbin and ready to see these cars unleashed. And Joey, we look from up above Iowa Speedway. It's great to go racing here for round 3 of our championship.
And Iowa Speedway as it existed 1 year ago. No repave, no single groove racing. This is the Iowa you knew and loved before the track was slightly adjusted with some new asphalt. So you're seeing multiple grooves in use right now. You're seeing from the onboard, the bottom works, the top works. It's Iowa as we love it. One of the best short ovals for IndyCar racing. Very excited to be here. Very excited to see what's absolutely going to be a classic Iowa race with 35 cars on 7/8 of a mile.
And qualifying about to get underway. We'll whittle down our field of 41 Dallara IRA teams, 1 driver missing unfortunately, down to 35 that go racing. And after this, halfway through the season, Belle Isle a week from today then leads us to America's National Park of Speed and to Road America before Auto Club back to the ovals. But a very different sort of an oval, right, as well, Joey? Short track racing versus the super speedway style racing. We're talking about a totally different aero package.
But that's how you succeed in IndyCar racing. You have to be the master of 4 different types of tracks: natural terrain road courses, short ovals, big ovals, and street courses. All 4 of those represented in just 4 rounds. So whoever wins this at the end of it all is truly going to be the master of every type of racing circuit. But Iowa's going to be the first real test of a big change. We've had 2 natural terrain road courses so far with Indy GP and Barber. Now suddenly we see maybe somebody else can jump out in front of the pack. Somebody who's a little bit more experienced in only turning left than some of the road course masters from elsewhere in the sim racing world that we've had for the first 2 weeks.
And we say just turning left. We know there's a bit more to it. We'll talk about the nuances of oval racing through the course of the 250 laps. Here's a look at the championship and how it sits right now. Michele Costantini, that victory last time out at the Alabama roller coaster at the Barber Motorsports Park, has seen him leapfrog himself to the front. Remember though, Eduardo Leo missed the second round of the championship. He was off carding in the real world until he returns, now lined up with his new team at Team Redline. red line as well, Joey, and ready to try and charge for the championship. It's going to be interesting how they fare. Remember, Phil Kraus, iRacing IndyCar regular, maybe someone you'd expect to be a bit more towards the front, and guess who's currently at the top of the practice time charts?
Eduardo Leo moving to red line, very interesting development. You know, if you can't beat them, absorb them, bring them into your own fray, and have them add to your team's championship points. So I like that move. I like that there's going to be some drivers who we don't even see in this top 24 in the field today, with a little bit of shifting and changing. There's some new names in this big grid of faces that are going to be making their season debut today. Maybe a couple of shocks could come from some of those new drivers. Yeah,
that's a good point. You'll note Phil Kraus is in the very bottom left of the screen. He's got his teammate Joshua Chin alongside, but above them, with the slight glaucoma blur going on, that is Elias Sepinen, who races GT4 cars and GT cars in the real world, races with the Apex Racing team, but he's here as one of our invited drivers, and he told me most of his IndyCar experience in the Sims actually been on the ovals. Our other invited driver, though, and one to watch, is he on the second page? Yes, he is. Bottom left with the blonde hair, Brendan Lichtenberg, and that Team I5G entry. Going to be very interesting to see how they get on in some brand new liveries here for today.
I'm lost in the eyes. I'm lost in the eyes of the drivers are, Junam. I was looking for a couple of other new names. I think Riley Thompson making his season debut. Cam Dance as well, potentially, or at least attempting to make their season debuts. I couldn't tell you where they were on the grid. It took me about 30 seconds. A lot of these guys kind of look exactly the same, but you'll be seeing all of them over the course of the night. You'll be getting some good reactions.
And what perfect timing. We stop looking at their faces to look at the cars right as they get kicked off the track for practice and escorted into qualifying. Whereas, again, 10 minutes, 4 laps. Drivers get the track to themselves and however they want to use those 4 laps as well. So, going to be very interesting to see how the drivers elect to use this time. Look at those conditions, though. Mostly cloudy, working through the evening. Wouldn't be surprised, Joey, if some drivers hope for some extra cloud cover and maybe a fast lap towards the end.
37 degrees Celsius is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Body temperature on track right now. A little bit better than it was in the real world. In the real world, it was getting very, very hot. I think it was probably 98.6 degrees air temperature and maybe 130 degrees track temp. It was pretty bad. But this is going to be an interesting qualifying session. It is open qualifying in a way, in that everybody in the group is on track at the same time. They're not on the same track at the same time, though, because that would be a little bit unfair. Open qualifying at an oval, dirty air would screw everybody. Looks like one of the Coanda cars was looking to get a qualifying lap in there, but didn't make it to the line. I think his first lap counted for Michael Romanides, but gave up on that second one to maybe preserve one more attempt.
That was Costantini, who decided that he maybe hadn't warmed up things correctly. Matt Taylor set a couple of times. His second lap pushed him to the top provisionally, but the Wave Italy car of Pablo Espes now jumps on to the top. I think that second lap may be where we'll watch for. And here's that camo entry. New liveries for Team I5G. Brendan Lichtenberg's going to run his way back around to the line in that number 10. 2 seconds off pace in lap number 1. What's lap number 2 got in store as he sees the start-finish stripe? It's going to be a 17.193, and he goes to second.
Lap 2 is absolutely where the faster speeds are going to be, because this track is so short. It's only 7/8 of a mile that you can't really build up the entirety of the speed you need in just that short warm-up lap. There are 2 corners. They will slow you down, so you won't be as far off pace as you might be at a super speedway, for example, where you might be down 10 miles per hour or so, but you definitely want that second lap to take as much momentum as humanly possible in, and Michael Janney is on that second lap right now. He's going to throw it down almost all the way down to the yellow line in turns 3 and 4. It's just the barest of lifts through there, and he's going to cross the line to not quite put it as high up as I think he thought, about 0.3 off pole.
And there was some pressure on that lap. That was his final attempt in qualifying. Same thing to be said for Pascal Stick. So a couple of drivers, we're not even, 3 minutes into the session, 2.5 minutes in. Oh, there's the reaction from Sticks. He's not very happy. And 15th provisionally, he'll only jump to 13th as Jesper Orman in the Indy Alliance racing car up to 4th.
And this qualifying is just who can master the weight jacker, who can master their tools inside the car, and who can master the perfect timing of that lift. You're not braking in qualifying. You are not doing anything other than lifting, trying to set up the car perfectly to make it down to the apex at just the exact moment you need. Elias Sepinen, I don't know if he made it to the bottom in time for what he would have wanted there, but in through 3 and 4, looks a little bit better. Somewhat early apex, gets it out to the wall in the exit of the corner. But you see, just that little bit higher than he would have wanted on the bottom in turn 1, knocks himself over that bump, looks a little bit out of control coming out of turn 2. It's only a 1/10.5 off. That's not a lot of time, but at Iowa, that is absolutely a lot of time, and that is just not a driver who's quite as comfortable as everybody else is getting down in those low 17s.
Meanwhile, as Sepinen now goes to 4th on his 3rd lap, his teammate Peter Berryman's onto his 3rd lap, but only now warming up. So very, very interesting, the different ways that they're all working through this. And only 25 times on the board. We've got plenty still to make themselves known. Slowest 6 or so drivers will not make it into the big race. And here comes Berryman to the line to get the lap underway. Now there's some pressure, because if he doesn't get this right, well, he's out. He's starting at the very back, if he even makes it in the field.
It's very low in turns 1 and 2, all the way down to the yellow line through 3 and 4, leaves himself about half a car length. Alex Van de Sandt goes up to P2, very good lap from him. But I don't see Berryman any higher than... I do see him any higher than 25th. It just took a moment. He put it all the way to the top.
He was happy. You saw the reaction as Van de Sandt bails from what would have been his final attempt. So, now who's really the ones to watch? David Toth setting up in the Drago Racing number 8. Danny Lorenzo as well on what's the 3rd laps of their run. Riley Thompson's just jumped to 24th. That might be good enough to make it into the big show. He's got Blaze Andrich, Diogo Pinto, Gustavo Ariel, Toth, Lorenzo, and Leo behind. Phil Krause has just gone to 21st. We got some big names making themselves known. Ariel up to 11th.
And Toth had himself set up with running the high line in 3 and 4 on the warm-up lap, but didn't quite do him very well on the 2nd lap, about 2.5 tenths off. 16th, should be comfortably in the field, should have no worries about that, but definitely one of those drivers who maybe has a little bit less oval experience. I know he has a bunch in the IR01, but maybe not necessarily in this car, this specific combination. And it just doesn't quite go his way. Oscar Mangan, very purple car, should be very difficult to differentiate from Joshua Chin's car, but we'll try our best. And he improves. But again, one of those drivers is about 3 tenths off. That's just a car that's not quite working as perfectly as some of those guys who are getting down to the low 17s, where they can give it the smallest of lifts through these corners. They can line it up perfectly, be on the ragged edge of grip. That's what you need to do to get down to the 17s.
And so now in what is the business then, Mangan to 11th. Chad Simpson went no better than 30th. He's one of our reserve drivers. It's really down the bottom where now the pressure's on. Burrell slides into 14th. Brian Carey in what is his final lap. He's 33rd right now, with still 6 drivers yet to even set lap times. He'll break his way back to the line. And with a 17.416, he'll only improve marginally, but up to 30th. That's surely good enough for him to make the big show as well. Now, who's left to improve? Phil Krause, out of nowhere to pole.
Speaking of drivers who have mastered this style of racing, I'm sure Phil Krause is probably tens of thousands of laps, maybe even hundreds of thousands of laps. He's turned around Iowa in an IndyCar, so in a type of qualifying where it is absolutely about those millimeter perfect margins, it's about being totally locked in and coming down to absolute milliseconds. No question that somebody like Phil Krause figures that out. No question that somebody like Robert Malechka is going to be able to figure that out. He knows exactly where that groove is that'll get him in a sub 17, maybe even in a 16. He knows exactly how to hit that every single time. And let's see what he can do here coming out of turn 4.
And so Ryan Barnavel's just jumped up to 30th. All but Adam Crane on the board right now. Malechka, final lap time does not improve. And so as Diogo Pinto sits in 8th position, the best of the red line drivers. There's 3 of the Powerslide Motorsports with private label team hype cars up towards the front. Who is on the final lap? Christian Hilgard's just broken the timing line. He'll start no better than 22nd. Here comes Seb Alexander, one of the Indy Alliance racing drivers. He just cracked the top 12.
Nice. Good qualifying from him. Top dozen. Good old Cam Dance, I believe, down at the back of the field right now, but I don't believe we've seen a real true qualifying lap from him in those purple and highlighter yellow Orbit Motorsport colors. Gets a little bit high out of turn 4. Does improve, but a 17.5, unfortunately, with a field as fast and as close as this, I don't know if that's going to be good enough to make it for what's a real shame, because that's one of my favorite liveries in the grid.
He's 38th, and alongside Pascal Stix, Wilson Nadeau, Cam Dance, Riley Thompson, and Blaze Andrich on the outside looking in. Here finally comes Adam Crane out onto track, and so with 2 minutes left in the session, only one driver left to run. Adam Crane has the distinct opportunity to bump Danny Lorenzo from the field. Can you imagine the nerves they must be feeling right now? Well, there's a look at the driver that's smiling. Oh, the pressure's on right now.
See what Adam Crane can do into turn one. He's done this hundreds of thousands of times as well. Gets it very, very low. Not all the way on the yellow line, but as close down there, maybe half a tire away as humanly possible. Then all the way down there again. Hits the apex in the middle of the corner. Off turn four, not all the way up to the wall, and sends it down to the bottom. Just minimizing time on track, minimizing distance. And I don't see Adam Crane on the bottom of the screen, but that tells me that he is safely in the field. 21st, there it is.
There it is. And so it is official. Danny Lorenzo becomes the first driver bumped. We missed him in action last week, and he doesn't get to even race after just coming up short. The margin as well, 37 thousandths of a second between 35th and 36th. Maybe a bit more remarkably in some ways, if you ask me, our field of 41, 6/10 covers the entirety of our cars.
That's what I was talking about. Qualifying at Iowa, it is a very, very unique challenge. It's a unique challenge at any oval where you need to absolutely maximize your use of the tools. You need to absolutely maximize momentum for every millisecond of the lap, but this is such a unique place because there is that tiny little lift. It's not even a full lift off the throttle. It's maybe a tenth of a second that you're lifting off just to set up the car into the corner, and it all comes down to that. Christian Steele, not quite enough of a lift there. I think carrying too much speed through the corner, bonks the wall in turn four, and he'll be stuck P10. That'll be where he kicks off today.
And he did try and save a lap at the very end, but with 20 seconds left to go, no improvement for him. Once again, you can see those weather conditions. Look how windy it is. That's something to think about. And we'll have 35 cars racing around this track when we go green. Think about that for a second. Joey, lap traffic going to be intense.
It will be intense. You'll be hitting lap traffic basically instantly. I don't even know if we'll have 10 laps before we start to run into lap traffic. You will be able to pass lap traffic because this is still the older scan of Iowa, the older asphalt. There's multiple grooves. There's multiple ways to get by, but it's still going to be very much a nuisance. And if you end up stuck in the wrong lane because you can't pass traffic, you're going to be very unhappy very early in the race if you're the leader.
So drivers who make the field get a couple of minutes now to, well, either leave their rigs or head back out on track for practice before we go racing. And, well, what a race that we've got in store for us. 250 laps. The potential for green flag pit stops. And, Joey, I say potential because, let's be honest, I think attrition going to play its part today. Even if we do get a long green flag run, just naturally, there are going to be cars that go laps down and end up dropping 1 or 2 laps down and maybe still fighting for 20th position.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the reality of Iowa. It's a fairly long pit lane, or at least it feels like it's a long pit lane with a very, very short lap, sub 20 seconds. So if you pit under green, you're going to be going 2 or 3 laps down. You get a caution, you're stuck down there for essentially the rest of the race, unless there's an absolute ton of drama that gets you cycled around. So that's why they call it the danger zone. That's why you do have to make sure you're looking out on track. Is there anything that could possibly happen if I make a green flag pit stop? It's always a risk. You're going to be hoping that there's caution so you don't have to do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if we end up maybe a little bit later in the race with a green flag stop.
I think I agree with you there. I'm fingers crossed as well that we do get a nice lengthy run. One thing to just keep in mind, drivers are expected to make their pit entry on the inside of turn 3, so they don't enter off of turn 4 at speed. No, instead they're going to have to make their way down onto pit lane through the apron. A little bit safer, you'd have to say, for all involved. Once again, let's take a look at our wall of drivers. A couple of them have stepped away for a few minutes. That's Josh Chin that's missing in the very middle below Elias Sepinen. Let's cycle back over to yet another page. Seems as though, for the most part, everyone else still in their rigs and ready to go.
What a group. What a team. I do see one Pato Award shirt. That's probably a good omen. That's probably a good that's a good possibility.
Andrew Marquez?
Actually, no. Andrew Marquez. I don't know why I said that, because Pato Award won at Mid-Ohio, not Iowa. I was getting myself confused, but he did win at Iowa in 2022, so maybe still just hearkening back to the past for the good possibilities there, so it's entirely possible that could work for him.
That was Costantini. Here was race 1 winner, Eduardo Leo, who did mention is now linked up with the team over at Redline. Going to be interesting how he works with his now new teammates, Gustavo Ariel, as well as Diogo Pinto. as they work their way through the opening stages of the race. Got to say, though, out of nowhere, at least on our timing screens, there's your pole sitter for the third round of the VCO IndyCar Challenge, the private label team hype with Powerslide Motorsports. Number 19, Phil Kraus grabs the top spot in qualifying.
I suppose we shouldn't really be surprised, though. He's a master of this kind of racing. He's a master of the IndyCar in an oval, especially the IndyCar in a short oval. The question now is just going to be who can beat him. Because if you look at the margins at the top of the field, Phil put it about 0.03 of a second over the rest of the field, which you wouldn't think is a lot, but he put it 0.03 ahead of second. I think second down to seventh was also separated by about 0.03 of a second. So it's pretty close behind him, just not necessarily to him. You're going to have to figure out how to pass him.
Fair enough. Peter Berryman does love the camera, by the way, at least when he's told that it's on. That's Pablo Espez. Berryman starts in second, Espez in third. A couple of quick drivers up towards the front, but let's talk about maybe some of those that we haven't seen so much to the front in the road course races, but they'll be up front through the ovals. That's Alexander Van der Sant, who's glaucoma background, I've got to say. Very, very accurate.
And glaucoma hands, too.
Oh, yeah, good point.
We can't be selling those for free. He's got to keep those covered up.
Ooh, and Rob Malech's got a brand new shirt, private label team hype shirt, finally.
And he's in the library.
That's where he's won both his iRacing Indy 500s, so to be fair, it's a pretty good place for him to be hunting from.
He's been studying up.
Oh, yeah, all the books in the background. Now, I don't think what Jacob has in the background is necessarily...
Put your hand over the screen, kids. Don't look.
Not necessarily conducive to going fast, but never mind. We are moments away from going racing. Joey, we missed you for round 2, but you were out there following the NTT IndyCar Series as they were racing, and now they get a bit of a break. We're so glad to have you back. What are your expectations? You've seen plenty of races at Iowa. What do you think we're in store for, given the disparity maybe in experience between IndyCar regulars and some of those road course aces?
Well, as I've made sure to sell, this is going to be a better race than we saw at Iowa in the real world. There is no repave. There is no single groove. It'll be just the old classic Iowa racing that we know and love, where you can pass on the top, you can pass on the bottom if you're on fresher tires, you can make moves happen. It'll be very good. I'm very excited. And then exactly as you mentioned, the difference in experience. You've got the Phil Krauses and the Van de Sants of the world and the Malechkas of the world who have been league racing in this car on these ovals for years. And you've got some other guys who have experience in this car now, who even have race-winning experience in this car, like Eduardo Leo. They might not necessarily have that experience on an oval like this, though. So they're going to be learning as the race goes on.
And well, it's time to build that anticipation for the drivers as they get sent down trackside to grid up and to get the engines fired up. 250 laps of racing, which, if it's green, could be as short as 70 minutes. Let's be real. We're braced for the inevitability, the cautions that lie in front of us. But with a sub 17-second lap, Phil Kraus builds a house up front in his private label team hype with Powerslide Motorsports number 19. Peter Berryman starts alongside him on the front row, and then Pablo Espez and Alexander Van der Sant share row number 2. It's Michele Costantini, winner in round 2, alongside of Rob Malechka to complete the front 6 of the starting formation. Jacob Oster, Diogo Pinto within a tenth of a second of pole. Elias Seppin, an invited driver, cracks his way into the top 10. Not sure many had that on their bingo cards. Christian Steele rolls alongside him to complete the top 10, with Jesper Orman and Seb Alexander making it an Indy Alliance Racing row number 6. 13th for Brendan Lichtenberg, and hopefully not unlucky for the Hyperstars as one of our other invited drivers. Oscar Mangan is alongside in that very purple entry with Matt Taylor, Gustavo Ariel, Kevin Burrell and Josh Chin. A quarter of a second splitting the front 18. Julian Oltena makes the field. He only got the call up yesterday. He's got Michael Romanidis alongside him. Adam Crane, the driver that did some bumping in the closing stages of qualifying. Jaden Munoz will roll alongside him with Edo Leo. Back in 23rd, week 1 winner. Lots of work to do with Christian Hilgard rolling alongside. It'll be David Toth, Andrew Marquez, Michael Gianni, Sam Carasala, and then Adam State and Jose Soria. The rest of the top 30 with Luis Nunez, Ryan Barnabel, Javi Ross, Brian Carey, and Chad Simpson are 35 drivers that advanced out of qualifying. I thought I was taking my sweet time reading down through that grid, but there's a look at some of the drivers who have already rolled themselves out, still waiting for the rest of the field. 35 cars strong. There's a couple of things that I want to ask Joey Tebben to put him on the spot about. I'll start with, I think, the hardest question of them all. Joey, how many cautions will we end up with today?
Let's go 3.
Ooh, you're optimistic today, huh?
I'm gonna go 3. because I think there's the possibility of an early caution, I think, with everybody stuck together with 35 cars instantly getting spat out on the short oval. But once things get strung out, even though there is the possibility of passing, there's always the possibility of actually going side by side. I don't think it's going to be as chaotic as we might think. There might be maybe a spin of somebody who hasn't quite figured out their tools, gets a little bit too loose, but I think it'll be pretty clean. I'm feeling good.
Interesting. Okay, so you're feeling optimistic. What do you in chat think? Watching on VCO Esports? Please let us know. I think I'm going to go for 6, Joey. I don't know why. 6.
As long as nobody runs out of fuel in turn 2, there's no Stingray Rob in the field, so there's nobody to jump over him. I think we'll be okay.
Oh, they did have their fair share of drama, didn't they? At the very end of one of our races when they went racing here a couple of weeks ago. I guess the other question is, remember, we'll get a couple of laps behind this pace car before we go racing because it is a short oval. Who do you think comes out on top? And I think that one is really a lottery, right? Throw your chip out and hope that it falls on the correct car. Do you go with someone inside the top 10, Joey? That's, I think, the question I have for you first.
I mean, I have no idea, because remember, Will Power won race 2. He started 19th, was nowhere all day, but then suddenly the caution comes out of the perfect moment, and he finds himself in the lead, and nobody's able to pass him. So that's how it can happen at Iowa sometimes. There's been many races in the past, in both sim racing and in the real world, where it's just been a totally ridiculous podium because some people got lucky with the way the cautions flew. So the smart part of my brain, the green flag for 250 laps part of my brain, says Phil Kraus is going to win this race, because duh, obviously. But then the chaos part of my brain says, who knows? Somebody in 17th is going to end up winning the race because they get a good caution and they save a little bit of fuel. So we have no clue. We're just going to have to see what happens.
As mentioned, get an additional lap behind the pace car before we go racing. I'll say my prediction first, so you can go second. Therefore, a little bit less pressure on you. I don't know. I think from pole position, it's hard to discount Phil Kraus, so I'll go with him. We'll build a house in Victory Lane. We'll have 3 different winners in 3 different races.
Am I allowed to agree?
You can if you want. That's a bold call.
Well, in round 1, I picked Xander Reed, and I think he finished in the top 10, but then he didn't show up for the last round or this one, so I think I may have cursed him, so I'm choosing Phil Kraus as well.
Xander Reed focusing on the qualifying series for the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup, and so it means a couple of drivers got the call up to join the field for this 3rd round of the VCO IndyCar Challenge powered by Open Wheels. And what a race we've got in store, 250 laps and short oval racing. And here at the Iowa Speedway, let's get the action underway. Pace car off and away. Not the last time we'll see it, that's for sure. Green flag in the hands of Phil Kraus, who holds them for a while. We're racing here for round 3 of the VCO IndyCar Challenge, and look at them stack up behind, already almost into the wall. Went Oscar Mangan in that very distinctive purple and black entry, but as they rumble out of turn 2, Oster already past Berryman. A terrible start on the outside in that Apex Racing Team number 50 will cycle back to the line. It's Kraus being challenged by Espes for the race lead.
Very clean so far, but things are getting very dicey. Up in the top 2, Costantini trying to make the move down in the bottom on Pablo Espes. Looks like he's going to be able to clear Espes with the momentum, but now it's learning how the dirty air works at Iowa. These guys have had a lot of practice. They've had a little bit of warm-up, but they've been focused on single car running for the last couple minutes. Now suddenly that car is not turning the way you want it to. You need to work on your tools. You need to find some clean air to keep it moving. Brendan Lichtenberg looking for that clean air up on the high side.
And looking behind him, Seb Alexander with a great run around the outside of Matt Taylor. Track position going to be key because dirty air so important to manage and navigate your way through. Work your in-car tools, the ARBs, the weight jacker as well. Look at the left side, see those positions moved around. Peter Berryman's trying to stymie the bleeding, but still being challenged by Rob Malechka as they rumble down into turn number 3.
And this is a tire-saving race as well. You have to make sure not to use up all your stuff too early. That high line is very, very attractive. There's going to be clean up there. There's going to be clean air up there. It's going to be possible to make moves around the outside like Diogo Pinto tried to do. But you have to remember that those tires are getting scraped off that much more. You're running at a higher speed for a longer period of time up there compared to the bottom, where you might be losing a little bit of that speed, saving a little bit of the tire, and being able to use it later on. So it's a trade. You want track position now and use the tires up, or you want to ride behind and save a little bit more.
And the gap between 5th and 6th, Van der Sande and Berryman up to a second or so. So Berryman struggling in the race trim relative to the qualifying speed. That's not to say he's slow. Could just be managing the race right now. Keep that in mind. Long race as well, and we've had these first couple of laps clean and green. That's exactly what we wanted to see. Jesper Orman now going to try and challenge Malechka around the outside. Inside starting to be the wrong place to be as the 91 slides back into line.
There's a lot of dirty air down there on the bottom, as that's where the race leader Phil Kraus is running. That's where everybody's trying to follow him through. You're going to be a little bit slower down there. But down to the bottom goes Elias Seppänen, trying to find a little bit of clean air. He's got about 2 cars of slightly cleaner air, but there is still another car about 2 cars ahead who is spitting the dirty air back there. I think Seb Alexander's trying to make the top work. Van de Sant was able to make a move on Jacob Oster, so moves still very much possible. There is a lot of clean racetrack. There is a lot of momentum on these still very, very fresh tires, but it does get strung out very, very quickly. Those tires do fall off very, very quickly at these high speeds, so gotta be careful.
One of those races where it's quite hard in some ways to know where to look as well. Gustavo Ariel just got past Oscar Mangan in that purple and black entry just in front of them, still have that little squabble. And Berryman now that Malechka no longer on the inside, is starting to close back up to the leading group. Alexander, that was a big lunge to the inside of Elias Seppänen. He loses some momentum. Can Matt Taylor challenge around the outside? And the Mad Works number 70.
Going to try and make it happen through 3 and 4. The outside, very, very comfortable. No bumps whatsoever. He's got the momentum. He's actually clear of Seb Alexander into 1 and 2. You have to be careful through here. There are massive bumps that you run over. They don't affect you as much as they would in a stock car, but they do still get you out of the groove and scupper your momentum a little bit. Didn't look like Josh Chin had too much trouble with him. He was able to hit him right, but you get that little bit higher, they're trouble, and there might be trouble if you're 3 wide into turn 1.
Well, I tell you what, Elias Seppänen having none of it in the middle. That's some of the real-life racing experience where you just don't want to get involved and you want to stay out of trouble. He'll now get the move around the outside on Alexander. Now, was there almost contact between them as they pinched each other through turns 3 and 4?
I don't know if it was almost. I think there may have been a little bit of a door to Elias Seppänen. Got very, very high out of the groove. Gustavo Ariel with the momentum might just clear him, but he can't quite get there. Seppänen still with the momentum on the outside. He's going to have a nose to the outside, but it's a little bit like a slide job. If you can send it into the corner, if you can slide up a little bit and clear another car, you're pretty well off. And Gustavo Ariel does exactly that. Gets the position, and he's comfortably up into P15 as Seppänen has to continue to fight to try and get back in line.
And you were saying this was going to be maybe a better race than they had in the real world. Seppänen, there was some air between him and that was Oscar Mangan as he slides up the track. Julian Ortena avoids running into the back of him, and credit where credit's due. We keep it green. 15 laps now complete. These drivers almost 10 seconds off your leader and 3 wide off the corner.
Once you lose momentum at a track like this, though, it's very, very difficult to get it back because you're constantly in clean air, or constantly in dirty air. There's constantly cars around you trying to instantly take that spot back, and Seppänen is still struggling to get back to that momentum that he had. He is finally back to the outside of one of the satellite cars. I think he is finally where he wants to be, but even though he is where he wants to be, look who's behind him. Eduardo Leo's still there. There's 2 more satellite cars. There's a Coanda car of I couldn't tell you who, but one of them that's painted identical. I believe it's Michael Johnny, all trying to make him as uncomfortable as humanly possible.
And 3 wide once more. Heart of the pack where all the action is right now. 2 by 2, they shuffle down the back straightaway. Oh, this is, well, it's single file up front. 1.5 seconds clear for your race leader. Everyone else behind having a bit more of a trouble. There is your race leader, who's only around 7 seconds away from catching some lap traffic. This is what happened to Elias Seppänen, that little bit of a moment that he had.
Yeah, looks like there was no real contact there, so no harm, no foul, I don't think, for either of those 2 drivers. Into turn 1 the second time, though, this was even more trouble for him. Or actually, I think this was a little bit later. It was 3 wide off the corner. Very, very sketchy. And then coming into 3 and 4, I think there was a little bit of a moment where he got a little bit loose. Was able to save it, though. Is going to desperately try to get this race back under control, but it has not quite gone his way in the first stint. It's gone exactly Phil Kraus's way in the first stint. This is kind of a ridiculous gap. 1.8 seconds over the rest of the field. Not even anybody else in the same shot. It's crazy.
It's, again, why we thought that qualifying might still be important, and hopefully there's no commentator's curse from either Joey or myself on that race leader sitting up front right now. Look at Diogo Pinto and Peter Berryman squabbling over 6th and 7th position. It's relatively close between them, side by side behind in the bottom picture as well as Michael Johnny, Elias Seppänen. That's the fight for 23rd spot. Pinto looks to the inside, action around the track. Berryman holds on for now.
That top is still where you want to be, and especially later on in the run as these tires start to wear, the bottom is going to become less and less really possible to use. You might be able to run down there, but you're not going to be able to make a move down there because you are just able to run at a higher speed for a longer period of time. You're able to find that clean air, and Pinto uses that to get the run, to switch back to the inside, send it to the inside of Berryman. He's going to try and clear him in 3 and 4, but he's not going to be able to, because as I said, being able to hold that speed for a longer period of time on the outside, it's exactly what you need to do at a track which is basically a circle. If you can hold your momentum in any way, you're likely going to be able to hold that spot. It is going to wear the tires a little bit more. Berryman's going to be struggling a little bit more from running the top for those extra laps, but track position's that important that he wants to keep that P6 for now.
And as Jesper Orman closes from behind, Alexander Van der Stant just, with a big wiggle, slid his way onto the podium spots as he passes Pablo Espes in the Wave Italy Racing number 55. And now 1.4 off the back of Michele Costantini. Going to try and make it effectively a power slide 1 and 2 up front. Here comes Pinto, though, on the outside. And can he rob Berryman of some of that momentum, pinch him down low around the outside for the Portuguese world champion of the Porsche Esports Super Cup a couple of years ago, and forward to 6th he charges.
It gets very dicey to send it to the outside, but it's such a good move that you have to do it. Jesper Orman, exactly the same thing. Gets a nose to the outside of Berryman in 3 and 4, sends it to the outside, and just totally easily makes that move. There he is. He's got the whole map of Europe behind him. I think he's looking to conquer all of Europe.
I knew you'd like that one.
With a very disconcerting portrait. Jesper Orman planning world domination, but it's been going his way so far. He's up to P7. He's already up a couple spots. And that's not a very pleasant sight for Apex Racing Team.
No, especially since Elias Sepinen, who qualified so well, is missing the front left of the wing. And so it leaves Berryman as the sole Apex representative. We know how quick he can be, though. He's running very well in the IndyCar Butt Kicker iRacing qualifying series. Second round made its way over to Indianapolis in the Oval this past Thursday. We'll see if Sepinen's going to be able to head back out onto the box out of the box after what would end up being at least a 13 or so second pit stop, but he would end up being a minimum of 2 or 3 laps down. Here comes Malechka now to the inside of Berryman.
Malechka clipped the yellow line a little bit there, clipped the apron, scuppered his momentum. He's going to have to stay in P9 for now, but if there's any driver who can make the bottom work, it's going to be Malechka. He's definitely a driver who knows how to save tires. He's definitely a driver who knows how to be patient and save his stuff for later. Berryman, definitely a driver who knows how to be patient as well. Tons of experience in his own right, but he has been running the top for the majority of these first 30 laps. Those tires are going to be worse off than Malechka, who's mostly been riding in line. And Robert is using that bottom to his advantage, closing that gap, getting closer and closer to Berryman. He's able to get to the inside. I don't think he's ever actually going to be able to make the move on the bottom, but he is putting the pressure on Berryman, and if he makes one little bobble, one little mistake, Robert's going to be right there to try and send it on by.
And again, the thing about having 35 cars take the green is such a big field. We've got action through the field, and as we've been watching all these fights, Christian Steele has dropped down the running order. What's happened to him? He's slowed down on the inside of the track just next to pit lane. I think we'll stay green through all of this, but he's dropped 1 lap down.
And he's able to keep it pointed in a straight line, so he's okay, but looking at all the corners of that car, it doesn't look like there's any damage, so may have just been a spin out of turn 4. We'll wait and see. He's going to bring it down pit lane, as makes sense. He's lost a ton of time. Minimize your losses. Just take a pit stop when you can. But here is what happened through 3 and 4. It's all looking perfectly fine, and then just a little bit loose off of 4. Just so easy to do. There's a little bit of a transition from the banking onto the front stretch. If you have your weight jacker tuned very, very high, if you're very, very loose, the balance of the car can shift as that transitions onto the front stretch, and it can loop you around with no hope of saving it once you've already lost it.
Ooh, and Christian Hillgard, who had a great finish, let's not forget, in our last round at Barber. He's down on pit lane as well, alongside Christian Steele. Sepinen does seem as though that will be the end for him. We'll wait to see if Hillgard or Steele going to be able to get back out onto track as we continue to watch Berryman and Malechka, the 91, putting the pressure on. Meanwhile, long train building up behind Jaden Munoz and back in that pack. Gustavo Ariel's just fallen like a rock.
You're seeing guys using that top to make those moves. The 25 of David Toth easily, or of Jose Soria rather, easily blows by Gustavo Ariel. He's been kind of at the back of the field for the majority of the day, but he's definitely been saving something, and you could see with being able to blow by Gustavo Ariel like that, saving tires is going to be very important. We're only about halfway through the run, and some of these guys have very clearly used up their stuff a little bit too early, and they're just getting blown by around the outside. Look at Luis Nunez doing the same thing, barely even halfway down the front stretch, and he's already totally clear.
And this is why this was the race that, to me, was the most interesting, because when we go to Auto Club, there's going to be racecraft that comes into play, knowing when to run into the draft and really try and slingshot your way on forward. But this is just such a different type of race that most of these drivers will have no familiarity with. It's where the likes of Kraus, Costantini, Van der Sande expected to have an advantage. And give kudos to the likes of Pablo Espez and even to Diogo Pinto for sticking up there within around 5 seconds off a race lead. As mentioned though, Julian Ortena got the call up around 24 hours ago to be part of the big show, be part of the race. 40 laps in, he's fighting side by side with Michael Gianni, and after quite cleverly avoiding a wreck slightly earlier on.
Definitely proving that he belongs to be here. He does have to look in the rearview mirror, though, because there are some absolute hunters behind him. Side by side into turn one, I think Altena's still going to be fine on the outside. The Quandikar, Michael Gianni, not quite able to clear him, and the momentum still very powerful on the outside, but you've got a whole host of bright red cars coming behind. David Toth is coming a couple cars back. You've got not Pablo Espez, but no, that is David Toth. All these red cars look exactly the same, Arjun. I'm losing track of all of them.
It's confusing, isn't it?
I'm trying to make the move.
And this is why you need to make commentators' lives more simple, because especially when they go zoom in the real world, I can tell you that for a fact, very difficult to pick them apart. We now officially have 45 laps in the books, and Kraus is in and amongst the traffic. We're up to already 26th position or so. It's going to go around the outside potentially to make a move now on Adam Crane, Ryan Barneveld, and Adam Crane, one that maybe many would have expected to be a little bit more forward. This is where patience really comes in. That gap between Costantini really starting to shrink as 3 wide for your leader as he goes down low.
And this is where you have to make those kind of low percentage moves at points. Phil Kraus ends up 3 wide with 2 lapped cars. He is able to make it stick pretty straightforwardly, but he can see Costantini in his rearview mirror, who's now getting mired in traffic a little bit. That's why Kraus made that move. He was able to clear the traffic. He was able to force Michele to pass those same cars in a slightly more inopportune moment. Costantini lost time. Kraus is now clear of the second satellite racing car. This is just masterful traffic management from Kraus, while Costantini's taking a little bit more time to get through these exact same cars.
Got to be patient though. That's what this is all about. The drivers were all kind of wondering if we were going to get a long green flag run, if we were going to get pit stops. It seems as though right now we're going to get that. We're going to get a good, decent run, and fingers crossed we'll see those drivers have to make their way down in from turn 3. It's a very treacherous and bumpy pit entry and pit exit as well. Officially now going to cross the line, start lap 50 of 250. This race is flying by.
It is, and not a single yellow yet. I don't want to jinx anything, but it was pretty clean on lap 1. I think that means it's probably going to be pretty clean for the rest of the race, but you do have to think about green flag pit stops, and probably about 30 or 40 laps or so. Those are going to be tough. Entering on the apron before turn 3, it's going to be almost a little bit like a road course. You got to have your road course skills with braking into a high-speed corner, hitting the apex down at the bottom of the track, and maximizing your time on pit lane. That could be where a race is won and lost. Knowing how to enter a multi-stage pit lane entry like that could gain you seconds on pit lane.
And the other part of that, right, is execution in the box itself. There's so much that these drivers are all going to be thinking about, and that is where the difference maker is. If you're stuck in line for lap after lap after lap, the value of fresh tires cannot be understated. A good undercut can make you some moves. Jesper Orman and Jacob Oster, they're fighting though, just as we start to cycle towards what we think to be the entry into the pit stop window.
Jacob Oster, another driver who knows how to save tires, who has a ton of experience in this style of racing, and he has slowly but surely been moving his way forward a little bit quietly. He's just been taking them off one by one, but you can see that he is absolutely way better off on tires than the rest of these guys. Look at him compared to Diogo Pinto, just sending it into turn 3, not even necessarily where he wants to be, sending it directly into the dirty air, and he's still faster than Pinto in that lap traffic. Down on the bottom, getting a little bit of the dirty air from one of those lap cars spat in his nose, so he's not able to make the move. But he is so much faster than Pinto right now. Those tires are so much better off. If he can find his way to the outside, he should be able to pretty easily get his way around Diogo Pinto.
Like you said, it is a tire conservation race in many ways as well, so those that saved at the start. Going to be in a much better position right now. I can tell you, Kraus has re-established what is now almost a 2-second advantage. Our fuel window, if you're wondering what it is, I think it really depends. My suspicion, though, 70 to 80. Going to say somewhere around there.
Well, this is back in the days where it wasn't necessarily a fuel window, it was a tire window. So your tires might be struggling to the point where it's worth it to just pit a little bit early instead of taking the fuel tank all the way to the end. But I think you're about right. 70, 80s, something like that will be where we see our first stop. So almost guaranteed to be a 4-stop potentially. Will anybody stretch it to be a 3-stop? We'll have to wait and see. Julian Altena's not waiting anymore. Lap 60, he's choosing to make his first pit stop. That car looks clean, so I think that's a scheduled stop, but that is very early. That is a risk.
Ryan Barneveld in as well, and so I think they're working backwards, maybe expecting some cautions and some fuel saving to work together. Your leaders, though, going to try and go as long as possible up front as Altena and Barneveld hit their marks down on pit lane. So far, only one incident noted by race control, and that was actually Elias Sepinen for an improper pit entry and for touching that yellow line that you can actually see on track. And so it's the only thing that they've had to look at, being a clean opening 60 laps or so. Your race lead now 2.7 seconds.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Phil Kraus is a master of this style of racing. Remember that season in the Lionheart IndyCar series where there were 22 races, 21 podiums for him? Yeah, it's no real surprise to see him doing this well. It's just going to be a question of, can anybody else in the field do anything about it? You might have to go off strategy. You might have to do something like this, which doesn't necessarily sound optimal. Coming in at lap 60, that would imply a 5-stop strategy at this race, which I don't at this rate, which I don't think is going to be the winning strategy. But go off strategy, hope for a late caution, cycle yourself to the front somehow. Might as well try something different if you're at the back of the field.
And it's a long pit lane as well. I think Gustavo Ario might have been dinged for something because he's still sat in the box and not sure he's going to be leaving anytime soon. Might be some damage. Seb Alexander has passed Peter Berryman on track. Romanidis is up the inside of Brendan Lichtenberg. This is crazy, crazy stuff as we head off into that pit stop window and drivers recognizing undercuts potentially coming. It's Malechka alongside of Oster. He slides his way up the inside and back up to 7th.
Yeah, the Jacob Oster drive forward has kind of ended, which is surprising. He was so much faster than Pinto, so much faster than Espes, but he's just kind of fallen off a little bit over the past couple of laps. And you saw Robert Malechka making a very rare move on the bottom to totally clear Oster. That tells you how good Malechka's tires are right now. That tells you how much faster he is than some of these guys. And he's going to get to the outside of Jesper Orman here, I think. Not quite. He thought about it, but decided to go for the bottom. Pablo Espes is now cycled out of line. Malechka's there, and I would not be surprised to see him get through all 3 of these guys in very short notice. Look how fast he is on the bottom. Totally planted. It's like he's got fresh tires on. It's crazy.
Espes has done a great job to stay up front, but I think now this is where that setup development from the bigger teams with more experience in this car comes into play. Bottom of your screen, by the way, you're seeing those cars that have already pitted try and work their way through a bit of traffic. Sam Carasala on the inside, as I think that's Jose Soria in the second of the Drago Racing cars, makes his way on through. So this is that confusing time of the race. And would you have actually believed if I told you this, Joey, that we'd get about 70 laps in and we'd have green flag pit stops, or would you ask if I'd opened up the bottle in the back of Jacob Oster's shot?
I could believe it. I could believe this
Whoa,
happening.
maybe not anymore. Jesper
no.
Orman, contact with Pinto, and that will surely trigger the first caution of the day. Right as some cars have come down to pit lane, and that red line machine with dangling body parts going nowhere fast as a big wreck behind.
And it's Oscar Mangan and Michael Johnny onto the scene as well. It was going so well. It was going so beautifully well. And then I think Pinto and Orman were side by side. There may have been some lap traffic involved as well. Desperate drivers, very worn tires, and it can come undone very, very quickly at Iowa, Arjuna.
And remember, they need race control's permission to tow, so they're just waiting for that before they head back out on the flatbeds, or maybe trying to spin it around amidst all the oncoming traffic. But that is going to be a rather lengthy and uncomfortable wait as we watch Taylor and Michael Johnny sitting there and waiting. Well, that changes things, and Phil Kraus has come down into pit lane.
Yeah, I would not be surprised to see the entire field come down this time. No real reason to stay out and go for a 5-lap stint or so and end up a couple laps down, because the danger zone did end up striking. Those couple of drivers who made that early call to try and make up track position with those fresher tires, they're now stuck 1 or 2 laps down. They'll get one of their laps back as they're waved around the safety car, but they'll still have 1 lap that they'll need to get back somehow and desperately hope for many more cautions to get back on the lead lap.
And no surprise that Kraus wins the race off pit lane. Costantini, Van der Sant close behind. And then, of course, because let's not forget they've pitted all with the gaps that they would have had behind the pace car for the most part. Not really going to be too much change outside of that. Did see Michael Romanidis stayed out on track. Not quite sure if there was any particular reason. Now we'll wait and see exactly how this is all going to funnel out as the iRacing safety car process works its way on through.
Yeah, I'm glad none of us actually have to do that. I'm glad it's automatic here. But that is what caused the problem. That's Brian Carey, who was the first car on the scene. I think he was a piece of lap traffic. He was about to go a lap down, ended up swerving out of the way of another car in front of him, and unfortunately Pinto was right there. Orman was right there as well. 0 seconds to avoid. Impossible to avoid any of that. And the second crash was Matt Taylor, I think, getting on the brakes to avoid the crash, unsettling the rear end of the car, and poor old Michael Johnny and Oscar Mangan just nowhere to go with Matt Taylor losing it on the brakes.
Well, I tell you what, let's take another look at the actual initial incident and ride on board with Diogo Pinto.
You see Carey and somebody else are doing battle, and Carey swerves to the inside. I don't think he realized that he wasn't quite clear of Pinto. And yeah, Diogo collected. Pablo Espes was in very close proximity to that as well. Jesper Orman was the big, or the not big benefactor. He was collected in it as well. These are just millisecond decisions that when there's one little bit of contact at a place that's so tightly quartered like this, can go very, very wrong. Lots of people can get collected instantly.
So I think 15 drivers scored on the lead lap right now is how I see it. Now, that does not mean it will be 15 that stay on the lead lap. I'm trying to figure out if there is the potential chance for any wave arounds. That would come if there are cars between Phil Kraus and the pace car, which you can see. There are a few. However, David Toth has scored 1 lap down. Jose Soria's 2 laps down. Kraus is between them. So I get the sneaking suspicion here that Jose Soria finds himself trapped 2 laps down.
Well, I think we'd have to look through the list of drivers who are ahead of Phil Kraus right now, but if they're 1 lap down right now and they get waved around, they'll be back on the lead lap. If they're 2 laps down right now, they get waved around, they'll be 1 lap down.
Right.
Yes. So Toth is screwed because he's behind Kraus. He's not getting waved around. Everybody else in front will at least get 1 of their laps back.
Soria, sorry, to confirm. Soria is the one in trouble. Toth is the one in front.
Okay.
Yes. It's confusing, identical
maybe
liveries.
They should paint their cars differently.
I know. And credit where credit's due here. Satellite Racing. They've made it easy. Anyway, here we go. We'll get a better sense. So Kraus is going to cycle back in behind your pace car as the rest of the field gets the signal that it will be 1 to go. They're still scored as 1 lap down, though, for me.
Yeah, they must have been 2 laps down in the first place, so they only got 1 of them back. That's the risk. Hitting under green at Iowa will put you 2 laps down or even 3 laps down, depending on how far back you are in the field. So, if caution comes out, that's the risk you take.
Well, we waited for a caution. It just had to come right as we were expecting the final of the green flag pit stops, and the danger zone very real. Couple of cars trapped 1 lap down. 15 cars still scored on the leading lap, and we've had about 6 cars now sit in pit lane and watch on as this restart gets back underway. Round 3 of the VCO IndyCar Challenge, live from Iowa. Don't forget, there are some laps cars intermixed with those leaders, so Jose Soria has got his mirrors filled by Costantini and Van der Sant, who will look to the inside as they break back across the timing beam. A green flag lap back in the books, but Kraus already half a second clear.
I think Jaden Munoz had to serve a penalty. Not sure what for. He instantly brought it down to pit lane. Michael Romanidis did as well. It's a bad luck for them. Instantly on the restart, having to bring it down, and they're going to go 2 or 3 laps down themselves. But a single file restart much easier to stay clean, much less dramatic than the initial double file restart. Everybody's still good, but now got to cycle into a rhythm again. The field is going to close up somehow, and there are going to be people moving forward, but it takes a little bit longer to get back into that cycle.
And I think because now we have so many cars one lap down, the race has changed, right? Those up front, I was going to say, not going to be as aggressive. Alexander Van der Sands just proved me wrong as he tries to go to the second spot on the podium. Costantini fends him off, but now challenge is on, and Jesper Orman, involved in that incident, still sits in 4th position. Oh, caution is back out now. Oh, and it's for Brian Carey, who has already had the rear wing dangling. Now, is that a second separate incident? What it does mean, though, cautions breed cautions. I'm worried for the second restart.
Yeah, second restart. People have learned. Costantini's maybe learned the ways of Phil Krause. You can stay that a little bit closer. But here's what happened to Carey. That was a car that I don't think was totally fixed on pit lane. The rear end, very much not happy running up high there. Gets very, very loose and totally out of control. It's hard to know because he was running under caution. It's hard to know whether the car is going to be able to take those repairs and still feel as good as it did, but it was clearly not up to health the same way it was before the crash, and he hit 2 of those bumps, instantly looped it around. I think that may be the end of the day for Brian. We'll see if he can get it fixed for a 3rd time.
Slow it down once again. Who's going to come down on pit lane? Josh Chin from the tail end of the lead lap will decide it's worth topping off once again. Now, he's someone that is known for good fuel-saving abilities, but 170 laps still left to go. It's a lot of math to be trying to work through and to figure out if your fuel save is really worth it.
Yeah, I wonder. 170 laps to go. Pit stops were just a couple of laps ago. We've run most of these laps under caution. I do wonder if we go green to the rest of the race, will it be a 1-stop or will it still be a 2-stop? I'm not totally sure. I feel like you're not going to lose that much time staying out instead of taking a second stop, so I don't know if a 1-stop is possible, if a 2-stop will even be chosen by anybody, but it's a question of how far can the fuel tanks go. Can you go 85 laps on 1 tank of fuel and make it to the end of the race? Because if so, a 1-stop would be the easy move to make, but we'll see.
Seems as though those that pitted early went 1 lap down. A couple of them may be thinking about coming in on this particular cycle down on pit lane, so Andrew Marquez leads in a whole bunch of cars. Couple do a bit of a fake, roll themselves back out onto track, and you can see those were, in that battle for 14th, some of those cars that were 1 lap down. Now no longer that close to the leaders. They'll have fresh tires, though. We'll see what that means. Lights are still on, so might go racing next time by. And I like the comment from Olivia Hayward in the Twitch chat. A lot of the more regular IndyCar runners, those with more experience in this car, they elected to try and go longer, try and keep themselves out of the danger zone, Joey, and it worked out for them, just as they maybe expected.
Experience is very important. If you've run multiple races of this same style, there's probably guys in this field who have run at least a dozen 250-lap IndyCar races at Iowa. They know exactly how these go. They know the possibilities. They know the risks, and that's why you saw maybe some of those drivers who are a little bit less experienced, who are at the back of the field trying to go off strategy, trying to do something crazy. They went for the risk. The drivers who have the experience of being boned by those risks before, they stayed out. They decided to go a little bit more conservative and do what was a little bit more normal and a little bit less risky.
Well, speaking of, here comes Rob Malechka to pit lane to top off himself as well. So, second of the private label team hype cars to do it in the pit stop sequence under caution. Have they figured out something on strategy? They got Jason Brophy helping them behind the scenes. Still a long way to go, though. About 50 minutes of racing if we stay out of trouble from here, but I think that is all but a guarantee, or bar a guarantee. There's no way that's a guarantee. That's what I'm trying to say. Mangan's going to drop to the tail end of the field. Malechka's going to try and sort himself into line as well. Oh, this is the fun stuff about pitting under caution.
And aren't you glad that you don't actually have to manually do this race control, Arjuna? You don't have to reorder the field. You don't have to look at timing lines. You can just let the computer do it.
Well, the best part about it is that, you know, you have someone holding your hand, whereas in the real world, I don't think a lot of people realize this, but take IMSA, for example. There, it's the team's responsibility to figure out if they're wave around eligible or not. And so for those that watch the Michelin Pilot Challenge race this year at Daytona, there was a team that took a wave around, and they were leading by a lap at one point, literally. And they didn't do it properly. So what was the penalty? I think it was literally like a 5-minute stop and hold. It's like as serious a penalty as it comes. In the real world, teams have to do a lot more of the race control responsibility than we let them do in the sim, or make them do in the sim, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, and I think that's how it goes in IndyCar now as well. There's no more 20-lap cautions to reorder the field. You know where you're supposed to be. Go there. If you're not there, you get a penalty. Simple as that.
Sounds simple. Much more stressful for race control behind the scenes, I promise you that. But lights are off on the pace car, ready to go racing once again. And Phil Krause, well, he's led every single lap so far. What's going to happen now, though, as we restart with the second caution in the books? Costantini, Van der Sande, Orman, Oster, Espes, Alexander, Burrell, Berryman, and Lichtenberg rest of the top 10. And already going up through the gears, side by side between Jaden Munoz, that seemed a little bit further down in the field. A couple of laps down, let's not forget, but will try and fight his way to try and salvage some points at the end of the day. So got a long way left to go before the checkered flies.
So Seb Alexander, one of the early cars, making the move up high. He was able to get by a little bit of lap traffic. And Kevin Burrell behind him doing exactly the same thing on the blue satellite racing entry. But it is single file, almost all the way through the field. Just some lapped cars, some little bits of lap traffic stuck in the middle of the field that some of these guys are trying to get through. It's a very different race now. There's a lot less cars to actually fight with for track position. And there's a lot of lap cars who are going to be very, very desperate to stay on the lead lap. This is for position, though.
This is. It's for fourth. Oster, who slid backwards, let's not forget, in the early stages. He's trying to fight his way back on forward. We'll see what that means for him. Meanwhile, here comes Matt Taylor down on towards pit lane. And, well, if you're wondering why, it is because race control deemed that the slight spin that Matt Taylor had in trying to slow down warranted a drive-through penalty, and so straight in to serve that. He will slide backwards down through the field. Meanwhile, back out on track, side by side, Oster around the outside and trying to charge his way to fourth.
And he's already going to be clear halfway through the corner. Excellent move from Oster. That's one of those early moves where you can send it around the outside, easily make that position. But as the run goes on, we saw it in that first long run. Doing that too often, doing that too early, wearing the tires too early, it will start to hurt you later on. But Jacob wants that track position. He can see a podium very, very close up ahead, and he's going to be making those moves and hoping for, I think, a couple extra cautions and not quite as long of a green flag run as last time. So
as Matt Taylor rejoins the surface, he's going to stay out of the way of your leaders who streak their way on past. Margin between your top three extends to just over a second as we ride on board with Alexander Van der Sande, a driver that in many ways we've seen save fuel on many occasions in various Lionheart Speedway and IndyCar Series races before. What's it going to look like for him sitting up here in third? And with a bit of a margin behind, flashes up the inside of the lap machine. And now that gap actually extends out to Michele Costantini. If you look forward from Phil Krause, it looks relatively clean for the time being, doesn't it?
It does, but he does have to remember that there's a few cars out. There's about 4 cars that are officially out of the race. Sepinen, Steele, Ariel, and I believe one more. But Eduardo Leo's still out there on track, so that's 31 cars he's still going to have to think about lapping. It's going to be a little while before he catches them, maybe 10 or 20 laps, but he will have to lap all those cars again, and he'll have to use exactly those same tools and exactly those same skills he used to navigate them last time. Michele Costantini is going to have to hope that he can figure out how to navigate lap traffic a little bit better than he did last time and not let Krause get out to a 2 or 3 second lead again.
That's the main thing, I think. Try and keep it close as you can. They've already got to the back of Oscar Mangan. Remember, we're not even 100 laps in. To give an update on Eduardo Leo, by the way, I think he had a technical failure at some point because he is a good 39 laps down on the field, and so was leading the championship after the first round. A much more different expression on his face right now. Still 3 rounds to go in the season after this as he crisscrosses on Andrew Marquez, who is currently sitting in 19th position. But for Leo, the next 3 rounds, he's got to make sure there's no issues and he stays out of trouble, qualifies up front and runs up front as well.
Yeah, every bit of experience he can get is very, very important. I hope we can get some sponsors on the side of that car.
Maybe he'll have a Team Redline paint for next week.
Maybe the old Redline livery for next week, but it'll be good. Maybe keep the black there. Maybe a black version of the Redline livery to differentiate it. I'd be here for that.
Just so that we can tell apart all the different cars that they do have in the field. That would definitely make it a lot easier. Anyway, here we go. About to hit lap 100. Costantini about 1.2 off the back of your leader. We've settled back into the rhythm very, very nicely. If you're wondering what it's like in terms of the conditions, by the way, plenty of cloud cover, plenty of wind as well.
It's getting cooler. The cloud cover is slowly blowing in, and it was 37 degrees Celsius in qualifying, whatever that translated to Fahrenheit. I think 98.6. Now only 34 track temp. It's only going to get lower and lower as the day goes on. That's going to make some drivers very, very happy. Those tires are going to be good for longer. That high line is going to be good for longer. It's exactly what you want. Cooler track temps at Iowa are always better. So I'm looking forward to more cloud cover. I'm looking forward to it getting cooler and cooler, and the drivers are too.
If we do go green from here, though, Kraus has just done a 17.993, which is the only car inside of the 17-second bracket last time by. Probably looking around 45 minutes to go as we cross over lap 100, 150 laps to go. Slowly flying through this race. And you say you like the track temperature when it's cooler. Now, some of the drivers disagree with you, some of the drivers agree with you. What's your opinion, Joey, on the lap count? Would you have wanted more laps, or is 250 enough?
I mean, I think it's worked out pretty well with... We already saw with those that one bit of green flag pit stop action that we saw, there was a wide open pit window. There were people coming in on lap 60. There were people who were waiting to come in on lap 80 or 85. I think it leaves a wide open possibility for multiple strategies. I think it's good.
Yeah, I don't know. I always like long races, don't get me wrong, but they've started running the 250s as part of the double header at Iowa, haven't they? I quite like the race distance. It works nicely.
Yeah. Is it a 2-stop or a 3-stop? That's always the question. It's more of a question on the sim because we actually have tires that wear still. Oh, and Pablo Espez kisses the wall. That's not going to be ideal, but it's a good race length. I like multiple strategies playing out. That's
the other thing. We had multiple strategies. We've had lots of them recently in this world of the IndyCar. We don't even have the multiple tire compounds. We don't have the hybrids either right now, let's not forget, which I guess good and bad. We don't have to try and figure out how that works on the ovals, as much as I'm sure some would like to play around with a new and shiny toy. I'm pretty sure, I'm almost 100% sure. There's some damage now on the right side of that front wing for Pablo Espez. Let's see what this means in terms of lap time for him.
And it's easy to get in a cycle. If you do make contact with the wall like that, you kind of get in a rhythm of running exactly that same way and making the same mistake over and over again. So he's got to get himself back in a good rhythm, in a clean rhythm, and make sure he doesn't do that again, because you're exactly right. You can see as he comes back onto the front stretch, there's a little bit of a scrape on the on one of the pieces of that front wing on the left side. Here it is in super slow motion. Bonk. Yep. No real disformation. It's still clean in the same shape. There's a little bit of a scratch, and you are going to be feeling that, even if it is that little bit of damage.
Yeah. And I like the black paint shows it up very nicely as well. You can't hide it with that simple paint.
Yeah, we should mandate black front wings. Took me a while to think of that sentence, but I think that's going to be my new law. That's my new case.
That's what Joey Tevin's going to be pleading for to the judge. Michael Romanidis has just come in for a front wing change of his own, so it's definitely tricky, and traffic plays its part. That's Marquez and Mangan, who are not necessarily fighting each other, but as Van der Sant slips up the inside, now the top three have broken away of those behind. Jacob Oster, are we at that point in the run? 40 laps complete, yes, with some caution slowing us down. Well, that Team I5G car starts to feel the pressure from, well, Orman, Espez, Alexander, and Burrell. We've got three of the Indy Alliance racing cars up inside of the front eight.
I think so. It's a little bit more separated than we saw in the previous stint, just because of how things worked out with damaged cars and lapped cars and being out of order. But things are starting to close up. There are comers, there are goers, and Kevin Burrell looks like he's going to be a goer. Makes a move around the outside of his teammate Seb Alexander, and looks like he's trying to run off into the distance. A little bit fresher tires, and Pablo Espez is only a couple of tenths ahead. Kevin Burrell could actually be a surprising big mover here. He's been doing some tire-saving work in silence over the last couple laps.
You know, given that we've only had the couple of cautions, the race that we have positioned right now, I think it's basically what a lot would have formulated Not necessarily sure they would have thought it would have been executed to this degree, not even halfway in, and we're left with 13 on the leading lap. In terms of championship points, let's see if that's going to work. Pop it up on the right corner of the screen. Bang. Oh my days. Would you believe it? 3 rounds done, 3 rounds to go. Kraus, as it sits right now, 2 bonus points for pole position, 2 bonus points for the fastest lap of the race, 2 bonus points for leading the most laps. He gets the perfect 56 and 1 point clear of Costantini heading off to the streets of Belle Isle.
Costantini in a little bit of a dicey situation here, though, making a move on some lap traffic on one of the BS competition entries on Ryan Barneveld. That was very, very close. Barneveld is a couple of laps down now, 3 laps down now, but he was still fighting that with everything he had. The Costantini almost saw a much larger championship gap grow there, but he was able to make it through cleanly.
And wow, look at that as well. We got a 3-way tie for 4th. And then a 2-way tie for 7th, Eduardo Leo. That's why he's trying to fight so hard, let's not forget. In terms of championship payouts, it's the top 10 where you need to be. Costantini, I think right now, if we're being honest, last thing he wants to do is get involved in a wheel-to-wheel fight. Consistency wins championships. He doesn't need to win this race. Phil Kraus put it on pole. Maybe the setup's a little bit quicker in a lot of ways as well. Better benefiting from the clean air as well. This is one of those races where second place could be a victory in its own regard.
It definitely could. I mean, with Phil Kraus in a race like this, if he puts it on pole, do you give up? Do you think it's not even possible to win the race? I don't think anybody does, but you do have a thought in the back of your mind that's like, yeah, if everything goes his way, if he doesn't get taken out, he's probably going to win this thing. So Costantini's going to be pretty happy with second. He does have to look behind him, though, because Van de Sant's closing that gap down. So there might actually be a fight for second, and he might be a little bit further back in the championship. But Kevin Burrell, who I mentioned was moving forward, who made that move on Seb Alexander, he's still moving forward. He's got that slightly damaged car of Pablo Espes, who he's hunting down. Jesper Orman's not too far ahead. Jacob Oster's not too far ahead. Good old Kevin Burrell, working in silence, but having one of his best races of the season so far.
And I think we might just have had another drive. Ooh, I was going to say enter pit lane, but not for the reasons that I was expecting as we cut on over to Xavi Ross. And the 04, a very black entry as well, showing off all the damaged scars. And well, add another one to the pile of incidents that have just been racking on up. Here's a look at what happened as he's wheel-to-wheel with Adam State in the World Sim Racing entry. Oh, hard into the wall.
Yeah, that was a very odd crash. Looked like an overcorrection on the exit of turn 2 that sent him into the wall. Yeah, this gets very, very loose. Tires were worn. Clearly had his weight jacker very, very high. Was getting a little bit loose, and then around the outside in turn 2, overcorrects it, sends it into the wall. Lucky not to bring out a caution there. He was able to drive it back to pit lane safely, but that's going to be the end of his day. It was a big hit.
Add one more to that retirement list. Brendan Lichtenberg, Josh Chin, and Rob Malechka on the edge of the top 10, fighting their way around to what will be the start of lap 126 next time by. Your race leader is officially now halfway through, has led 125 laps, well, just 125 laps left to lead as well.
Get your started on pole, let every lap ready. Because yeah, he didn't even lose a lap in that first green flag pit stop cycle. So, and am I mistaken, Arjun?
That was not the fastest lap that time by, don't worry.
Okay, so it's not totally incredible. It is incredible, but it's not totally incredible. He's setting fastest laps about 60 laps into the stint. He does still have the fastest lap of the race, which is a little bit earlier, so it's truly been a grand slam for Phil. Was he fastest in practice too?
He was when we talked about him. Now, I'm not sure if he was at the end of the session, so that's a good point, actually. Is this literally the perfect race weekend for Phil Kraus? We'll have to wait and see. Fighting behind, by the way. There's a little bit of those, 1 lap down, 2 laps down. David Toth and Adam Crane are the only drivers left on 1 lap down, and they will go 2 laps down sooner rather than later. So Christian Hilgard just passed Julian Oltena. This is for 20th position. And this is something that I did talk about in the driver's briefing with the drivers. We're going to get to a point in this race, if we go green for long enough, that there's going to be people fighting for decent points inside of the top 20 who are 2, maybe 3 laps down from your leader. And the judgment calls that have to be made, Joey, when to fight, when to push, as Ryan Barneveld sees the look to the inside from Pablo Espes. This is where the best will make their time.
And Ryan Barneveld has definitely been one of those drivers who's been fighting. Even though he is a couple of laps down, he is still going to fight with these guys. He's going to fight with them cleanly, but he is still going to try and keep himself in the fight as much as he can. Make sure he doesn't fall back too far, but it's probably going to be frustrating for Kevin Burrell right now, who was trying to get by him, who was trying to get by Pablo Espez. Ended up losing a bit of time, stuck behind Barneveld, but through 3 and 4, he is clear. He is looking forward again at Pablo Espez, but lost a little bit of extra time there that he did not want to lose, and that Pablo Espez can use to just breathe a little bit, and he might honestly be fine with that big of a margin. It's almost a full second now that he was gifted in that lap traffic. He might be fine until the pit stop cycle rolls around.
I tell you what as well, as this all just continues to roll through, we're not far away. Lap 62 on the run for your race leader. So expecting him down to pit lane sooner rather than later. Brendan Lichtenberg in that battle with Chin and Malechka that we had been talking about just a few moments ago. Joey, they're only 12 seconds up behind the leader. That means not far away from going a lap down.
They are close to going a lap down, but they're also potentially close to being able to do a one-stop. That's going to be the main thing here. With Malechka, with Chin, with Carousala, they took a risk to go to the back of the line, to go back to 11th, 12th, and 13th under that last caution, to take a little bit of extra fuel.
Oh.
But I think those could be some very, very important laps of fuel. If they can make it to lap 85 on this stint, if they can make it 30 more laps, and then they can do that again to the end of the race, they'll have cut out an entire stop compared to the top 10, and I don't think they'll lose that much extra time saving tires and saving fuel. So if they can pull it off, this could be the winning strategy if we go green all the way. It's just a question of whether they can actually make it that far.
Brendan Lichtenberg has really slowed down. I wonder if he's just trying to put himself in position for the pit window to be where he needs to be. Just look at this move, though. On board with Josh Chin as Rob Malechka passes his way around the outside of the Hyperstar. Yeah, that's how you can tell. Someone's pushing, someone's not.
Yeah, Lichtenberg, he's on the same strategy as the rest of the guys in the top 9, so I'm not sure what he's trying to do, saving tires or saving fuel, or what he's trying to pull off here, but he is definitely struggling a little bit, not quite as quick as the rest of those guys, and falling back to the back of the field as we ride on board with Alex Van de Sant. He was very close to Michele Costantini just a couple of laps ago, was potentially a threat for second, but this race has just become totally stratified in the top 4. 2 seconds between Kraus and Costantini, 1 second, 1.5 seconds between second and third, and then Van de Sant 3 seconds ahead of Jacob Oster. It's a very lonely part of the race right now, but he's just trying to hang in until that pit stop cycle rolls around.
And if you're thinking about what he's fighting for, let's not forget 5 extra points for finishing in second. That would jump him closer to the fight for 4th position and a bit out of this tie for 7 that he currently sits in with Eduardo Leo, break clear of Jacob Oster and Josh Chin as well. So, you know, every position worth points. These are moves that these drivers will want to make sooner rather than later. And let's go back to where I think traffic's closed them up. Oster, Orman, Espez, and Burrell. Burrell looks like he's trying to get to the inside as the caution flies right before the pit stop window was about to open. And I'm not quite sure why it's out. Brendan Lichtenberg slow, though, out of turn 4.
Boo hiss. That was going to be such an interesting strategy run to the end. And now it is going to be a guaranteed one stop to the rest of the race. Everybody's going to come down under caution and make one more stop a little bit later. But here's what happened. Lichtenberg and one of the Coanda cars did come together, so definitely understandable that that was a caution, but so unfortunate.
Now, that can't have been Costantini, surely, right?
I don't think so.
It would have to be Michael Romanidis, and confirmed it is Michael Romanidis. Here's a look at the sequence once again.
Yeah, Romanidis gets a little bit high, not ridiculously high. Lichtenberg a little bit off the wall, so just a little bit of a racing incident between those two cars coming together, locking wheels, and there goes Michael Romanidis into space. Lichtenberg gets turned around, and unfortunately for him, he was doing all that work saving fuel and saving, and he ended himself 1 lap down. So he will be able to get waved around. He will be back on the lead lap, but he will not be on the same strategy as everybody else.
Well, that's not ideal by any means. Let's take a look at what happens, though, on this race off of pit lane as Kraus, best stall of them all, up front. Costantini's a lot closer than before. Van der Sant's there as well, but is Kraus away. Oster beats Orman off. Espez, not much damage to repair, it would seem. He holds on to 6th in front of Burrell with Berryman, Alexander, Malechka, Chin, and then Carousala. The rest of those scored on the lead lap. But I tell you what, for the likes of David Toth, Adam Crane, and a whole bunch of others, I wonder what's about to happen. Now, David Toth has been out on track for 81 laps and counting. He's going to get the wave around here, or is he going to come down to pit lane? I think he's got no choice. He's got to come down to the box. He'll go one lap down once more.
That is unfortunate. I don't know if we have a replay of that Phil Kraus stop, but he very nearly just lost the lead of the race there. He overcooked it coming in, had to back it up. Here it is, pulling into the #1 pit stall a little bit too much, locks it up, has to back it up. And you could see how close it was with Costantini and Van de Sande. He almost lost the lead doing that.
It's such a small mistake. You can see how deep he was as well. That wasn't a small mistake. That's yeah, you can't afford to do that at the end of the race when it really matters. He got very lucky here. You said it's a guaranteed one stop from here, right?
Yes, absolutely. 106 or probably 100 even laps once we go green, something like that. I think it's going to be a guaranteed one stop. You can't go 100 laps on fuel unless there's a ton of caution.
So how do you split this race up then?
I don't know.
50 and 50?
50-50 would make sense, but it's going to be a question. I don't know. I don't know what the move is going to be. Do you wait as long as humanly possible and don't risk a caution and then just do a splash at the end? Do you go 50-50? The 50-50 is going to be riskier because if you're pitting before anybody else, you put yourself at risk of going multiple laps down, as we've seen multiple times today. So I don't know. If I'm Phil Kraus, I'm going to lap. Well, I'm going to 20 to go or whatever, and then coming in for a splash. But we'll see.
So Kraus will want to go as long as possible. Anyone behind, I guess it depends on how far back you end up being. So now that Brendan Lichtenberg is back out on track, it does seem as though 1 lap down for him, as well as David Toth, 2 laps down for the rest of the field. So we pretty evenly split the field up into those on the lead lap and those 2 laps down and a couple left in no man's land, unfortunately.
Yes. So I think Kraus is going to go as long as humanly possible. Everybody else in the top 12 who's still on the lead lap, they've got to think alternate strategy. They've got to think, how do we beat this guy? Do we take the risk and make an early stop? I don't know. The cautions today haven't come from what I would say cautions that you'd expect from Iowa. They've just come from weird moments of 2 cars meeting in the middle of the track. They've come from weird moments of lapped cars making weird moves. They haven't been predictable cautions. They haven't been predictable crashes. So you can't predict when a caution is going to come out. You have no idea.
Right. So 104 to go when we get back going. I did see it was Matt Taylor and Jaden Munoz that got one of their laps back. They're 2 laps down, but they do owe us a pit stop, and sooner rather than later. So they may end up going a couple of laps down once again as a result of that. But let's get ready to go racing. Should be a good shootout to the end as well. Don't see too much traffic interspersed amongst the leaders. I might see Eduardo Leo, but outside of that, I think top 10 relatively clear of any slower cars. So here we go, pace car off and away. And let's set up a bit of a shootout, a sprint to the end. Just 1 pit stop required. Phil Kraus has led every lap so far. Can he continue the trend here at Iowa? Right, well, no one's really going side by side just yet as they build up the speed, build up that intensity behind Nunez and Marquez, 19th and 20th. They've swapped around, but you'll lead to see the timing line as they were inside of the top 12.
It's another perfect restart for Kraus. Costantini just a couple of tenths behind, but a couple of critical tenths behind that may end up cementing him in second place for quite a while. Riding on board with Peter Berryman now. Haven't seen him in a little while. He's been on his own in the middle of the field, but now's his chance to show off some of that short run speed that we saw him have in the first stage of the race and try and make some moves. Unfortunately for him, Kevin Burrell's got a ton of short run speed as well, if anything a little bit more, and Berryman just forced to ride in line in 8th for now.
And I'm very curious how Pablo Espez is going to run the further we go into this race. We thought he had damage. Pit stop time doesn't seem to indicate that. Jacob Oster on the charge. What's he going to do as he's right on the back of Alexander Van der Sande on the back straightaway, diving down into turn 3. Shorter line, but maybe slower speed for Jacob Oster. Van der Sande holds on to 3rd.
Yeah, they're just trying to get track position when they can. They might know that Phil Kraus has this race under control, but Costantini does not have second place on lock. And if you can make a move early on, get that track position away, you might be able to hold on to that for a very, very long period of time. Van de Sande trying to make the bottom work. Oster trying to make the top work. You heard a little bit of contact with the wall there. Not a ton, probably his rear tire or rear body work to wall, so no damage is going to come from that, but these guys are pushing. They're looking for every inch to try and at least get third instead of fourth, or second instead of third, because that's all they can ask for with Kraus in control.
It's the margin, right, that you're talking about. You can literally fit a piece of paper, a mere pixel, between these cars and the line they're running up to the wall. There's the track conditions. Wind has slightly calmed down from its peak. It's still pretty gusty, and we're still looking at track temperatures that mean the foot is planted to the floor more than it's lifted off the throttle. Remember, they brake in the real world. They're still carrying considerable speed down through the mid part. I've seen slowest apex speeds for this front group, about 270 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, it is very, very fast-paced racing around here. Even in the dirty air, even in the middle of the field, it's still not like a short track like Gateway, where you're absolutely braking, where you're start, stop, start, stop. This is start, lift a little bit, go a little bit slower through the corner, and then keep going. It is constant action. It's almost like a circle where you're constantly turning. This is a very, very uniquely intense short oval. And at the end of it all, even with a couple of cautions, your arms and your elbows and your shoulders are going to be hurting. So it's very intense as we ride on board with Van de Sant in the middle of the field. Those are your three grooves. Kraus running the bottom, Costantini running the top, Van de Sant running the middle, all in clean air somehow. That's the beauty of Iowa. You can run anywhere.
And there you see the rest of the cars slogging in behind. Attrition's played its part. Javi Ross, Brian Carey, Diogo Pinto, Michael Gianni, Gustavo Ariel, Christian Steele, and Elias Sepinen. All unfortunately DNFs from this race. And look at this as Chad Simpson gets a bit of a scare. Jose Soria is very tight to his left rear tire. They'll hold on and they'll keep it working. Meanwhile, up front, Van de Sant challenging. He'll dive to the inside down through turn 3. He was able to hold on to the spot around the outside with Jacob Oster. Costantini does the same to him.
Yeah, Alex tried to make the move on the inside. He was fully alongside. He was actually ahead for a couple of milliseconds, but wasn't quite there. But Costantini hits the wall on the exit of turn 2. You heard that, and you saw a vibration in the camera. That was not a tap. That was a pretty big hit. And Van de Sant is going to be very happy to see that. He's forcing Costantini into mistakes like that. That means he's feeling the pressure, and that might not be the final mistake.
Jesper Orman sits behind as well. Remember, he got tangled up in the incident that did see Diogo Pinto and a few other cars retire. But look at those movers and shakers. Plus 10 for Burrell, plus 16 for Carasalo, fellow Indy Alliance Racing drivers, plus 12 for David Toth. And here we go, some more traffic to make our way through for your race leaders.
Oscar Mangan's done a very good job of staying out of the way. He's done a very respectable job of just riding as high as possible, riding out of the groove and letting everybody go by. Because, you know, he knows he's not really fighting for anything right now. He's here for his first round of the season. He's having a good time, but he'll be back, and he'll be competitive again in another round. For now, he's just trying to make everybody as happy as possible.
Here's a look at the replay, by the way, as they all funneled off of turn 4. Ooh, Adam State was 3 wide with one of the Drago cars and Chad Simpson down low. Hip check into the wall, hoping the World Sim Racing car. Not going to be worse for the wear after that. Remember, Pablo Espez also got very, very lucky. We're about 20 laps into this run now, and we've still got your leaders, top 5 or so, covered by under 2 seconds. So as the conditions cool off, as these drivers push more at the end of the race, we are starting to see closer gaps in the big margin that your race leader was able to open up. Look at Orman go down low, close on the back of Jacob Oster.
These two have been going at it all race long. The two JOs. Jesper a little bit higher, Oster a little bit lower. Lower line wins out for now. But once these guys are in dirty air, it's going to get a little bit more interesting with Jesper more willing to run the high line. Also, I should correct myself as Oscar Mangan's getting out of the way again. It's actually his second round of the season, not his first. He was with us at Barber, but it's his first oval round of the season. So doing as good of a job as he can to give the others respect. Malechka not giving Berryman that much respect, trying to clear him off turn 2, but yet again, nobody is faster on the bottom than Robert Malechka. It's crazy what he's able to pull off down there. There's not a single other car in the field that's able to be that fast and able to make moves like that down there on the bottom.
And so we'll have to keep an eye on if Malechka now 4.7 off the lead. Remember, he was one of those that pitted under the previous caution, was hoping to go long before we just had that most recent yellow. Is he going to be able to claw his way back up into contention with your race leaders? Remember, Two of his teammates sit in podium spots right now. Kraus and Van der Sant, first and third. Now Orman's working up high. Can he try the crisscross? Can he get underneath of Oster running down to turn one? Battle of the JOs. Here comes Orman to the inside.
But he doesn't quite have the car to run on the bottom like Robert Malechka does, and he's not going to be able to make that move. In lap traffic, though, with Brendan Lichtenberg, Alex Van der Sant was able to get to the outside of Costantini and was able to make that move.
That's where the opportunities present themselves. Remember, Lichtenberg now going an additional lap down, was sitting one lap down, and so Powerslide Motorsports and Private Label Team Hype 1 and 2. What does this mean for the battle between Oster and Orman as they start to close on to the back of Lichtenberg as well? Oster, given a bit of help by his teammate, gets out of the way.
Yep, helps to have teammates, helps to have buddies. Because even though he is 2 laps down, he's not really in a fight with any of those other guys who are 2 laps down. Hildgaard's a little bit further back, Crane's a little bit further back. Not really going to be worrying about either of them. But as we ride on board with Orman, he is so good at building up the momentum on the high side and then being able to switch it down to the inside. But unfortunately, the car is not good enough on the inside to actually be able to make the move. So he's got to think about how can he time this slightly differently. Can he get to the outside at any moment? Is Oster going to let that happen? Looks like probably not, and boom! It's a big hit for not Pablo Espez, a similarly painted car in turn 4, and I think that was one of the Alliance cars that almost got collected.
It was Luis Nunez in the other of the Wave Italy Racing entries that's now down on pit lane, and I think joins the pile of retirements that have started to stack on up. Just 11 cars left on the lead lap. It's a very normal race at Iowa. 77 to go. Is anyone going to pit sooner rather than later for the final time today and try a bit of an undercut? They'll put themselves in the danger zone, yes, but when does that potential call cycle in your direction? If you're Orman, if you're frustrated behind Jacob Oster, who's now dropped behind Michele Costantini to the tune of about 0.6 of a second. Phil Kraus extending that margin up front. 75 to go next time by. You can make it to the end if you're brave.
Unfortunately, Jesper is realizing the unfortunate frustration of racing with Jacob Oster, which is that he loves to run the top, and if you want to run the top, you're going to have to fight very, very hard to take it away from him. If you're at a place like Iowa, a place like Homestead, a place where there is a very, very high line where you can make moves and get the clean air, he's going to be taking it away from you. He will take your line away. And poor old Jesper, unfortunately, it's a perfect strategy because Jesper can't make the bottom work.
Frustration, but that's what motorsports are sometimes about. Frustration for Michael Romanidis, who has a penalty for that bit of contact with Brendan Lichtenberg. That's the wrong incident that is popped up on your screen right now. There's the correct one, number 53. Drive-through penalty confirmed. Oster, by the way, bobbles on the yellow line. That's uncomfortable. That's very uncomfortable. He almost gets past there, but it's the mistake that they're waiting for. About 20 minutes left to go, and your race leader enjoying some clean air before he's shot off into traffic once again.
And I don't know how this is going to go now that it's Van der Sant in second. Is he going to be slightly better at lap traffic navigation than Costantini was? It's going to be a whole different game. Kraus is not totally comfortable, I don't think, anymore in first place. He's got a rival who has a little bit more experience running in traffic here, and maybe a little bit better than Costantini was.
Indy Alliance racing cars definitely looking good. Alexander just made the move on Peter Berryman. Now finally Orman up the inside. He just runs out of steam, out of momentum once again. And every single lap this happens, more frustration builds. Meanwhile, Malechka, look at him on the inside and clearing himself of Pablo Espez.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think he's a little bit too far back to think about race winning, but who knows? If we get a late caution, could Malechka end up being in the conversation for the race win? Possible. He's up to P6. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in a couple of laps up into P5. But I think he started a little bit too far back. He's been stuck in the middle of the field for a little bit too long to fight for the win.
Josh Chin also now past Peter Berryman, who is a penultimate runner on the lead lap. Just Sam Carasala behind. Traffic, though. Traffic has given Orman a chance. But as Ryan Barneveld sits there on the outside, Jacob Oster runs out of room to run. He's still got speed, though. Is he going to try and take it 3 wide? He clips the back of the zebra. And now as one of the Coanda cars slithers up the inside as well, Oster's got some work to do to try and claw his way back up to Orman.
Unfortunately, the Jacob Oster strategy, it's frustrating for the driver behind when you're taking away your line. Unfortunately, it gets frustrating for you as well when it gets spat back in your face. You're trying to run up high. You're trying to get back in your line, and Unfortunately, there's a lap car there, there's your rival there, and it does all come undone for Jacob Oster, who can't quite make the bottom work. And there's Robert Malechka right there, who absolutely can make the bottom work. This might not even be a fight as he sends it down into turn 3. And it's not even a fight. He's clear before the corner's even halfway done.
Way too much momentum lost there for Oster, unfortunately. And he'll try and build it back up. Remember, that's the problem. You lose the momentum. How do you get your speed back underneath you? Takes you a while. Lichtenberg, by the way, I think he's still got damage after that 44-second pit stop in the last caution sequence. He dropped to 16th position and continuing just to bleed time. But 64 to go for your race leader. And now as it sits right now, Phil Kraus, teammate behind him. If we did have a restart, I'm not sure how feisty Alexander Van der Sant and how punchy he'd want to be, but at least some cover now back to Michele Costantini.
That was a little bit scary, though, with Matt Taylor in the wall on the front stretch. Gets out of the way, but that doesn't look like a very comfortable car for Matt Taylor. Remember, that car's been damaged a couple of times as well. I don't know. Kraus is hopefully not getting flashbacks every time he sees a car in the wall, but there's still some damaged cars out there that get out of shape, that do some scary things. We're not totally out of the weeds yet. A caution is still totally possible. I think that's why he's still out on track right now.
Trying to salvage anything that you can. Remember, only those that make the race itself get points, so the 6 drivers that did not advance from qualifying find themselves with no points out of today. That's one of the things that makes the championship so interesting. Take Luis Nunez for an example. You know, just retired from this race, but he's failed to, unfortunately, advance from qualifying in either of the opening 2 rounds, and so puts him at a very, very difficult position in that championship hunt. Meanwhile, let's go back to the likes of Belle, Alexander, Josh Chin as they try and fight their way through traffic, try and fight with one another as well. There goes Chin up high.
Very purple for Chin. Remember, he's the purple car in the lead lap. Mangan's the purple car that's a couple laps down. But unfortunately, he's having a similar situation to Jacob Oster, where he loves running the high line. He's able to make the move up there, but poor old Ryan Barneveld, who's a lap down, is just trying to stay out of the way. He's up high as well. So Chin does clear the lap traffic. Alexander clears the lap traffic as well, but nothing is gained by either of them because they're both still running the same exact line. Chin does build up the momentum now, though. He doesn't have any lap traffic up there. He's able to get a little bit closer to Alexander. He's going to get even closer now through 1 and 2, but I think he's going to have to make the move on the bottom where he doesn't have the speed to do so.
I wonder if he's hoping that they catch the back of Kevin Burrell and Pablo Espez, and if that slightly helps them as well. Sometimes you're not trying to actually make the move on this particular lap, you're waiting. Espez has passed Oster, though, who might have incurred a little bit of tire damage, and indeed, at the end of lap 51 on the run, he's going to come down to pit lane. He really does push the entry, but avoids clipping the yellow line, and it's a nice, tidy run down onto pit lane for Oster for the final time today.
A little bit of a lockup on pit lane entry. Hopefully he was still okay with pit lane speed, but this is going to be close. And it's going to be a question of how much faster is he actually going to be on fresh tires. Phil Kraus right now is running 18.1s with his best laps being 17.6s. Can Oster find clean track? Can he run about 7 or 8 faster laps to actually make up all that time? Those are 2 very big questions, and it's hard to find clean air when the entire field is basically spread around the entire track like this.
He did have to sit there for an additional 5 seconds, so 13 seconds stationary indicates a front wing change for that brand new livery on the Team i5G machine. Christian Hilgard's just gone around the outside, so Jacob Oster is officially 2 laps down and in the danger zone. Don't think that was scheduled by any means, but he'll try and make the most of a bad situation from this point forward. 3 seconds the margin now up front for Phil Kraus. Pablo Espez, now that he's got past, of course, Jacob Oster's maybe slightly damaged machine. What does Kevin Burrell, Seb Alexander, Josh Chin and Peter Berryman have in store for them? These drivers about half a lap down right now from the leader.
And if I'm Van de Sant right now, I feel like I'm going for the Oster strategy. I feel like I'm coming down to get that track position and hopefully take it away from Kraus, because I don't know if he's going to be able to close it down any other way. Riding on board with Josh Chin now, who is a very big demonstration of what dirty air and what running in traffic does to your race. Phil Kraus in clean air out front, a little bit of lap traffic, just running away from the field. Poor old Chin, maybe a little bit faster when he finds a nice draft, but absolutely stuck in traffic. Can't really move on Seb Alexander because he's got Kevin Burrell and Pablo Espez and Brendan Lichtenberg chopping everywhere around in front of him.
Espez holds on, takes advantage. Now that's a sign, that's a statement though, because Oster instantly has just punched in the fastest lap of the race, 17.600. So he's 0.3 quicker than your leader. More importantly, he's about, what, 7-8 tenths quicker than these drivers right now.
Yeah, he's gonna be well off. I think he might make up the time he lost from the front wing change, but it's not going to be enough to put him in the fight for the win, unfortunately. Riding on board with Seb Alexander here, he's just trying to figure out where to go. Burrell, Espez, side by side, taking the dirty air or taking the clean air away on both lines. Where do you go in that opportunity? Do you go even higher than both of them if that's physically possible? Do you go find the clean air in the middle of the road? Unfortunately for Seb, it looks like he can't really do any of those things, and that's actually going to allow Josh Chin to end up on the scene in the background to go for the high side and go for the move on Alexander, and Kevin Burrell has a car that works on the inside somehow. He's going to try and make it work on Espez.
I think we're only 10 or so laps away from that pit window officially opening, and the first drivers may be actually thinking realistically to come in to get confirmation from the pit wall on Team I5G side. Damage to that front wing, Jacob Oster, after contact with Barneveld, so it was just that traffic interaction. And there goes Josh Chin into pit lane, and this is a bold call from the back of this pack.
Gotta go off strategy. You have to do it. You have no choice. You are finishing 10th place if you don't do that. But that is a big lockup for Chin. Again, there was no speeding for Oster, so he was totally fine, but Chin, again, just totally locked up across the line. We don't want to see a private label team hype pit penalty. I think he'll be okay, but he'll be able to gain a little bit of time if he can find clean air. He might even be in the conversation for P6, for P5 even, depending on how this goes.
And so Chin has left this fight. They've resumed hostilities. Maybe the more important question is, where is Jacob Oster? Because it was only a couple of laps. Is this going to be enough for him to get the undercut? Well, Oster's inserted himself in the middle of the fight. He's going to look to the inside of Pablo Espez and unlap himself relative to this fight. Chin getting up to speed, though, going to be just behind Oster. And so there's the indication. Already, Jacob Oster has undercut the people he's fighting with for track position right now.
Yeah, even with 5 extra seconds of front wing change. Look at Robert Malechka making moves, or at least trying to make moves on Jesper Orman, still trying to use his bottom advantage. Not quite able to clear him, but he's still fighting down there. Burrell and Espez doing exactly the same thing on the bottom of your screen. Honestly, if I'm Robert Malechka, I feel like I would be making the same move that Joshua Chin was. I'd be coming in early, because that might put him in conversation for the race lead, and he's so good at saving tires that I feel like he might honestly be able to hold on to it, but he's not interested in doing that yet. He wants to make this move on Orman on track.
I thought for a second Seb Alexander was going to duck down to the pit lane. Peter Berryman was the one that decided, you know what, I've had enough. Let's come into the box. And so now a comparison for him. I think Josh Chin and Jacob Oster might already, though, 17.897 for Oster last time by, have done enough for the hard work to make the pass happen in pit lane. Will it be reversed at the end of the race? We've got less than 40 laps to go. We're into the fun part of the race, and here comes Malechka into the box as well.
This is going to be an interesting move. Does Kraus cover this off, though, is going to be the question, because Malechka is going to be faster. He is going to be closer to the fight for the race win, or at least for second. Does Kraus continue on for 18 more laps, or does he come in right now and cover it off? He's gonna have to start thinking about it, because both of his teammates have pitted now.
Well, Berryman comes out a good 3 or so seconds behind Oster and Chin. It's an example of how powerful the undercut can really be. I can tell you that Orman has responded to Malechka, but no one else inside of that leading group with 37 left to run.
How long is this stop going to be for Malechka? 8.2 seconds. Straightforward stuff. Pretty normal stop. And he's going to come out, I have a feeling, pretty far ahead of Jacob Oster still.
5 seconds.
Yeah, those 5 seconds of front wing change. That's exactly the margin that's hurt him there.
Ends up actually coming down with Malechka being slow off the lane. Still about 3, but a very good point there now. So as Espez has been passed by Alexander, he comes in, brings Burrell with him. Karasala stays out. This is why we do love a good strategy battle all the way to the end. And I wonder when Kraus decides it's time to blink and make his way on in.
Well, all of these guys are covering off Malechka. Alex Van de Sant covered him off. I think he's still going to come out ahead of him. That's actually going to be very, very close. Where is Malechka? There he is, up on the top of the track. Okay, so he has not been able to pass Alex Van de Sant. Van de Sant's still going to be second, but Kraus is really putting himself in danger here. Van de Sant could really be the driver who takes full advantage. He was about 3 seconds behind. He's going to be gaining about half a second a lap. If Kraus stays out here for 5 or 6 more laps, Van de Sant might take over the race lead after the pit cycle's over.
And so, exclude David Toth from the equation because he is also yet to pit. He comes in after around a 75-lap run in the next handful of laps, you'd have to say. Alex Van de Sant, 17.839 last time by. What's it going to be for him at the line? 17.713. Costantini's decided it's enough. It's time to blink. But Kraus still out there. 220 laps about to be complete.
Very interesting. I think Kraus is... Maybe he's just trusting his abilities to
make
moves. And there he is, covering it off.
Right, so Alex Van de Sant, net leader on track. Costantini versus Van de Sant. We're not expecting that to be close. Question really is, battle between the teammates, who wins? I am going to be curious where Costantini emerges, though, relative to Malechka and Orman, who've already been on track for a handful of laps.
7.8 for Costantini. Easy stuff for him. There's Van de Sant coming around the outside, blowing by Costantini. But I don't think it's going to be quite enough to get that much closer to Kraus. I think he might be within about a second or two, but getting held up in lap traffic a little bit. Here comes Kraus out of pit lane. Here comes Van de Sant through turn 1. I think Kraus is still going to be in the lead, but maybe not. Van de Sant has a run.
And with the undercut, Van de Sant takes over the net lead of the race. Carasala's in pit lane. Malechka's going to power his way forward. Now remember, we do have a tire delta. Kraus drops to net 4th on the road. We've got a race to the end. 29, make that 28 laps at the line.
That is shocking. I did not expect him to be as far back as he was, but a slightly slower stop potentially than expected. Ends up with Phil Kraus getting jumped by all 3 of those guys, who he absolutely does not want to be behind. He does have better tires. He is the fastest car on this track. He's been able to pull 2 seconds over anybody else in the field on total raw pace. And he's going to be able to make this move fairly quickly on Jesper Orman with those fresher tires, with that optimal setup that lets him run on the bottom. But Malechka's not going to be an easy pass. Van de Sant's not going to be an easy pass.
It is now private label team height with power slide 1 through 3, and we end up in a very similar situation to which McLaren was in quite recently, where the leader pitted after those teammates behind, and now there's been a bit of a leapfrog. Let's see what happens. There is a not insignificant delta we should not forget. Look at that left side of the screen. Phil Kraus has been out on track for just 4 laps, 12 for Malechka, and so around the outside, Kraus powers back to second.
Yep, I expected Malechka to be able to fight a little bit more than that, so that's very unfortunate. I think Van de Sant is about
Peter Berriman's in the wall, and are we going to see the caution fly right after the green flag cycle?
Van de Sant is screaming right now, please. Throw the caution now, and it's not going to come. Kraus is able to get to his outside and is just able to blow by Van de Sant for second. It's only a 6-lap difference, and that just shows how much faster Phil Kraus has been over the rest of the field. He has been ridiculously in control of this race, and he had to fight a little bit for it. He doesn't get to lead every lap, but yep, that's gonna be him back in the lead, and that's gonna be Peter Berriman getting hip checked a little bit.
And so who was that with? That would have been Pablo Espez, because I think it was a fight for position off the corner. There's a lot of netcode between them, yes, but
yeah.
I wonder if race control going to have one more thing to take a look at in the closing stages. Do we still have the chance for Malechka and Van de Sant to fight? They've got to keep an eye on the fact that Jesper Orman's in 4th. He has leapfrogged Costantini through the cycle as well. Costantini's got some work to do, I feel.
Yeah, I don't want to say the race is over, because anything can happen. We could have a late caution, you never know, but I am surprised that Van de Sant and Malechka weren't able to fight at all with Phil Kraus. He just instantly blew by him. And now, poor Costantini, who's getting blinded by the light, thought he was going to be 1 point behind in the championship. He's now 9 points behind in the championship on tires that are no better, really, than the 3 in front of him. It has not gone his way strategy-wise.
And that's how things change in a championship like this. Berriman, by the way, as a result of that, has been forced down to pit lane. He's going to finish outside of the top 20. He's going to be very, very frustrated with that. We've seen so much potential from Berriman. Oh, it's just not all clicked, has it, here today We know he can be quick on the ovals and quick on the road courses as well. 3 rounds at the end of the season still to set himself up as nicely as he can. Meanwhile, 19 to go, ready to become 18, and your leader's broken away, Van der Sant, as they pass Jaden Munoz as Malechka in the rearview mirrors.
If Malechka can pull off second place here, I feel like that would be pretty big for him. Started a little bit deeper in the field than you would have expected for him, but has slowly but surely been moving his way forward. It's only up 3 spots. He started 6th, but he was not 6th a little bit earlier on in the race. He got shuffled back. He was fighting in 9th for a long period of time, and he has made all of these moves on track. This has not been strategy for a pass on anybody but Jesper Orman. Every single other one of these passes has been on track, and he's had to work very hard for it.
And speaking of passes on track through traffic, Orman down low. Is that going to give the chance for Costantini to build up the momentum? Oh, he almost runs into the back of Jaden Munoz, who takes avoiding action and pulls aside. But now you can see that the tyre delta is starting to play a part. 6 laps between them in terms of pit stops. Orman on the worn Firestone tyres, Costantini down low, and back up to 4th, although he washes up the track and gives the Indy Alliance Racing Machine another chance to fight back down low.
Fortunately, Jesper does not really have the car to fight on the bottom, and it becomes Iowa. It becomes Iowa as expected yet again, where the top is just dominant, and Costantini with that momentum is really able to make that happen. And that kind of just goes to show how special what Robert Malechka is doing is, because he's able to make the bottom work like nobody else in this field. He's been able to save his stuff and make moves down there. And he should, even if he doesn't win this race, he's gonna have to take a lot of solace from that. But he was able to do something and make moves in places that nobody else was actually able to.
And here we go, battle for 15th, 3 laps down, but Jose Soria might still have a chance to fight up there in the top 10 of the championship. He's being frustrated by Julian Altena, and another reminder, Altena on very short notice got the call up yesterday to be part of the race, had to get his paint sorted. Fortunately had a setup from a league race a couple of weeks ago, he said. He had to make the field, checked that off the bucket list, and did so comfortably. Qualified in 19th, has run inside of the top 20 for most of the race.
Here comes Soria back around the outside. It switches back. Both of these guys are fighting for the same piece of real estate, but can't seem to stay in one singular line. So it was Altena on the top the previous lap, Soria on the bottom that lap, Soria back on the top this time around. And how about a totally different order of events this time, with Soria moving back down to the bottom, Altena trying to make a run happen on the top, and now, or rather, Jaden Munoz trying to make a run on the top. Now Altena a little bit further back is trying to make the move back on the top and trying to catch back up to these guys.
And again, points for all of these drivers, let's not forget. So for Jose Soria, wants to very much hold on to that spot. Let's check back in up front. There's Jacob Oster. I think he's really about to feel the pain. He's been on track for 47 laps, remember. Had to come in early after a bit of damage to the front wing. He's got Kevin Burrell, Indy Alliance Racing's number 52, and a second Indy Alliance Racing car, Seb Alexander's number 49, right behind him with just 8 laps to go.
And all these spots matter. Every single position comes with a different set of points, and 8th is 24, 9th is 22, 10th is 20. Those are points that could be very important at the end of the season. And if you're fighting for 5th in the championship, where it's so close in the middle of the field, you're going to want to get every single point you can get, consistency over the course of all of these 6 weeks. They are just riding in line for now, but there's a little bit of lap traffic coming ahead. There's some fallers, and there are some much faster drivers looking to make their way through.
Speaking of the faster drivers, there's a whole conga line behind Brendan Lichtenberg. But Phil Kraus sees the start-finish line, sees Barney the flagman. They've got 5 laps to go. He's got 1.6 seconds behind. Now, note, Pablo Espez has taken the fastest lap of the race away from Phil Kraus, so he's only going to get 54 points from today. But he will still leave very, very comfortable, and might this race be settled under the safety car, because Jacob Oates just pancaked into the inside wall, 4 to go, and a slow car rolling around track.
Oh dear. I think he'll be able to drive it back. He is down on the apron. He's off the racing surface, and it is pointing in a straight line. Throttle still works, so I think it'll be no caution for that. But poor Jacob, as I was saying, every point's going to matter in the championship. He was still in a solid top 10 position, but coming out of turn 4, just as we saw with Christian Steele early on in the race, late in the run, the transition back onto the front stretch, a difference in banking, and the anti-roll bars and weight jackers, as they've been adjusted for a car pointed in a straight line, the second it starts to get a little bit out of shape, they freak out and they keep spinning you around.
One more lap to go at the line, and Jacob Oster's going to drop out of the top 10 as a result of that. And just 18 seconds or so left for Phil Krause to hold on. And what a remarkable race. A third different winner about to be crowned. And with 3 races left to go, who is ready to make their presence known and to make a championship charge? We knew that coming to the short track at Iowa, it was going to be different. It was going to be tetchy. Phil Krause has risen through all of that, led the most laps, put it on pole, and wins at Iowa in round 3 of the VCO IndyCar Challenge, powered by Open Wheels. A dominant drive from flag to flag, and Alex van der Sant, Rob Malechka make it a very good day for the private label team hype with Powerslide Motorsports crew 1, 2, and 3 out on track.
Just totally dominant. Didn't quite lead every lap. There were a couple of Van de Sant laps in the final pit stop cycle, but started on pole, led nearly every lap, had the fastest lap for the longest period of time, probably led in practice as well. Don't ever come to Iowa anymore and not think Phil Krause is going to win, because he's going to be scary around here for the rest of time.
Well, I'm just confirming, he was fastest in practice. He wasn't fastest in the warm-up session. Does that ruin the weekend? I don't think so. Powerslide.
Well, the warm-up is the most important session, so yes, that ruins it. This is a hollow win now.
Michele Costantini had some pretty perfect burnouts last time out at the Alabama roller coaster. It's Krause this time building his house in Victory Lane here at Iowa. We'll take a look at the race results. We'll catch up with the drivers as well for some post-race reactions, and then we'll look forward. Street circuit racing left to come. Adaptability required for the drivers. Krause 1.6 seconds clear after 250 laps of racing, but Powerslide Motorsports able to get the setup dialed in, and all 3 of their podium sitters started up inside of the top 6. Josh Chin climbed his way forward, 12 positions gained, up into 6th spot as well. Costantini and Norman 4th and 5th. Just reminding everyone that the IndyCar regulars, those with more experience, maybe playing the strategy and able to get the result that they would have wanted a little bit easier. But Pablo Espes shines in 7th, the best of the rest, you'd have to say, with Indy Alliance Racing 8th, 9th, and 10th positions. 1 lap down for Sam Carasala, 2 laps down for David Toth and Christian Hilgard, while 3 laps down for a lot of the others. Crane, Soria, Altana, Simpson, State, and Marquez. For Oster, unfortunately, drops to 19th as a result of that self-inflicted mistake. He finishes in front of Barneveld and Lichtenberg, Munoz, Taylor, Romanidis, and then the graveyard, the retirees. Berryman, Eduardo Leo recovering to 26th in his first race officially in that red line entry. Oscar Mangan, Luis Nunez, Javi Ross, and then Brian Carey alongside Diogo Pinto, Michael Gianni, Gustavo Ariel, and Christian Steele. Elias Sepinen also took the green, but the rest of the drivers, Blaze Andrich, Danny Lorenzo, Pascal Stix, Cam Dance, Riley Thompson, and Wilson Nader, we unfortunately did not get to see them in the race itself. Well, he burned it down in Victory Lane. Now he's standing by for a chat with us. Winner of the 3rd round of the VCO IndyCar Challenge powered by Open Wheels, and a 3rd different winner as well. It's Phil Krause that's built his house here at Iowa. And Phil, you led every lap, you put it on pole, you won the race. The only thing you didn't get to do was the fastest lap. How are you feeling after a pretty much perfect weekend?
Yeah, Arjuna, that was a perfect race from all of us at Powerslide and PLTH. 1, 2, 3, and then we had Josh in 6. Like, honestly, great work from everyone. Jason on the box, he put together an amazing Iowa set. He always has, and big thanks to him for helping me out today. But yeah, that feels really good because I've had some bad luck outside of this series recently, so that feels good.
Feels good indeed, and I gotta say, you take the lead of the championship. It's around 10 points between you and Michele Costantini. We've got 3 rounds to go. I know you're not going to focus on the championship, but we've got Belle, Road America, and Auto Club. How excited are you about the back half of the season and a potential championship fight?
Yeah, always looking forward to that. Michele is obviously super strong, and looking forward to the fight with him. And tracks like Detroit, they can always throw a curveball, throw a wrench into things. It's a really technical, difficult track, and hit one bump wrong and you're out of the race. So, yeah, really looking forward to that. Really looking forward to Road America, home track. Always got to represent there. And then, obviously, Auto Club, everyone at Powerslide puts together amazing oval setup. So, looking forward to that automatically.
And, well, before we let you go, how was traffic? We've got to ask. Seemed like there were a couple of 3-wide moments. 35 Indy cars at Iowa. We got through seemingly unscathed. Talk us through that from your experience.
Yeah, honestly, 35 cars at Iowa. It's a bit of a squeeze, Arjuna. But yeah, it wasn't as bad. I had a moment where Xavi lost the rear in front of me out of 2 and ripped the whole right side clean off his car. I thought my race was over there. Had my life flash in front of my eyes, and it definitely took me like 5 laps to get back into a rhythm from that, because I was like a few tenths behind him out of the corner, so I thought I had no chance of avoiding him. But other than that, pretty okay, to be honest. Like, obviously, if people raced you real hard, it was difficult to get it past them, but that's going to be the case at Iowa.
Sounds like a race that went mostly according to the expectations. Phil Kraus, victorious here in round 3 of the VCO IndyCar Challenge, set down to his teammate Alexander Van der Sande. He really pushed the pace on Michele Costantini, got his way forward to second. He's standing by with Joey Tebben.
Indeed he is, Mr. Alex Van der Sande. P2 at the end of it all. It seemed like it was the Phil Kraus day. Practice qualifying almost every lap in the race. What more did you need to potentially knock him down?
Yeah, caution would have helped. I was kind of forced to pit early there, just with how Michele was catching me. Yeah, by the end, Phil just had way better tires than I did. I think Rob was trying to manage his engine temps as well, so I was kind of safe there. But yeah, just got forced into a box right at the end. But yeah, really happy with that race. I mean, a 1-2-3 for Power Slide is fantastic. So yeah, really proud of that race and happy for a podium.
Was there any hope when we had you in first, Robert in second? I think Jesper was up to third, and Phil was all the way down to fourth. Was there any hope of being able to hold him back, or did you all think it was kind of a foregone conclusion?
No, I was just trying to get laps, survive on the fresh tires, and just make up as much time as I could. But yeah, once he got there just wasn't much I could do.
Well, congrats on P2 all the same, Alex, and we'll see you next time at Belle Isle.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
And so step our way on over from one more Power Slide driver to another as Robert Malechka joins us now. And Rob, really did have to charge your way through after you got put back in the pack slightly midway through the race. Talk us through it. Did you have some fun? And Power Slide 1, 2, and 3 must have had a pretty good car underneath you, all things considered.
Yeah, it was great. I had a blast. I made it pretty interesting for myself with everyone else going, 54 inlet, and I went 70. And let me tell you, Arjuna, I was blowing up those last 150 laps.
What? 150 laps?
Oh, yeah. My dash was red, just managing it. I was running probably 2 to 3 tenths off pace. I went for the one stop because, I think I could have managed it a bit more. Fuel saving, but I did not need those yellows for it to go green for it to push because I was I was blowing up, man. So, yeah, we'll take it. We had a absolute hyper dock at Iowa. 1, 2, 3, and P6 for Josh. Yeah, we conquered, and getting ready for next week then.
And let's talk about next week. Back onto the street circuits. How you feel, or rather onto the street circuits for the only time this season. How are you feeling about our trip to Belle Isle, which, by the way, it is the best street circuit of them all, right? That IndyCar race is that? You're on the same page with me?
Sure. We'll go with that. Yeah, I am not looking forward to it. I'm sure everyone knows that I am quite crap at road courses, let alone street courses. So, if I can just survive and somehow get a top 20 in a stacked field like this, I will take it.
That's the expectation for Rob Malechka, Power Slide and Private Label Team Hype 1, 2, and 3. See you next week, Rob, and hopefully we're talking to you again.
Yeah, thanks for doing it. Take care.
Oh, I'm surprised you didn't say unlikely, but I guess there's that. Joey, what a fun race in a lot of ways. I think it went to the plan for some, not to the plan for others. We can take a quick look at how the provisional championship standings sit. And I say provisional. Actually, no, excuse me. We can't do that right now. But we did see it slightly earlier, right? Will it pop up onto the right side? There you go. It does. Phil Kraus, Costantini, only about 7 points between them. And then a big gulf behind and a lot of drivers in that 3rd through 10th equation.
Yeah, a lot of those drivers from third on definitely need a big day at Belle Isle to keep their championship hopes alive. If not, it could be the Kraus and Costantini show, which is not a bad thing. That'll be very entertaining to see them going at it. Auto Club, obviously, going to be a big Phil Kraus place. Belle Isle, Costantini maybe has the advantage, so it's going to be a championship battle for the next 3 weeks, guaranteed.
And what a run that we have to close this season out as well. Let's just take one more look at that schedule. Kraus, mentioned his home race at Road America taking on, specific importance for him. Auto Club to end things off, though. This was a race where attrition was expected to be high, but Joey, for a very different reason to why we expect attrition to be high at Auto Club.
Yeah, there's the higher possibility of high-speed accidents at Auto Club. There's also the possibility of a lot of attrition at Belle Isle. Those concrete walls come out very, very quickly. There's some very big curbs, so it is not going to be an easy second half of the season. There's going to be a lot to survive. There's going to be a lot of focus needed. It's going to be very tough.
And that is indeed. Well, it's time for us to wrap things up. 250 laps in the books, and now the third round of the season complete. We're halfway through the 2024 VCO IndyCar Challenge, powered by Open Wheels. A third different winner as many races. Eduardo Leo, Michele Costantini, and now Phil Kraus etch themselves into the record books. And a dominant day for Kraus and his private label teammate with Powerslide Motorsports teammate. They roll in with some momentum to our next round in just a week's time. Can't wait for you to join us then. But for our team behind the scenes at VCO Esports and at RaceSpotTV, for Joey Tebben alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, we thank you for your company once again, and we can't wait to do it. Street circuit racing next week from Belle Isle. What more could you ask for? Round 4 of the VCO IndyCar Challenge. See you then.